Happy Friday, everybody. TGIF, thank God it's flat. My name is Josh Corey. You're listening to Iron Realm Media, Flat Earth Friday FRINGE-CAST. We are joined by a usual cast of characters. Looks like we've got a pretty full house today, plus a special guest this week. First off, let's just say howdy to James. I haven't had a chance to talk to James pretty well all week. I certainly have missed speaking to him. Jimmy James, how are you this week, sir? Oh, did he not pop back in?
Here, Josh.
That's right.
I think he dropped again.
Son of a gun.
He's having issues with his connection today. We've lost him already.
Well, shit. All right, well then, I'll say hi to you, Walt. I
Hey, man.
talked to you this morning.
We hung out a bit this morning, just a bit, you and I and Rob. It was a great show. Had a blast with you guys.
For those of you that aren't aware, we are hosting a show on Truth Frequency Radio on Tuesdays and Fridays at 2 a.m. to 4 p.m. Pacific time. That is 10 a.m. to noon, Greenwich Mean Time. It's called the Ironworks. Check us out. We're out there pounding out the truth, hammering it out. All sorts of stuff. We cover pretty much everything. There's nothing that we won't cover. It's just that we've been covering a lot of Las Vegas lately, and I'm about sick to death of hearing this Las Vegas crap.
Yes. Oh, it's done. And yet it's not. That's the problem.
And yet
they're still embedding the story today.
Right. Rob, you joined us this morning. How are you doing? Did you get a good night's sleep?
I did. Lovely, rested. Like the birds are singing, the blue skies. Lovely, lovely day. Thanks for asking. I went on a couple of rants last night, but everyone will have to go and jump on TFR and have a listen. It was good. Good. I thought it was a really, really good show. Yeah, really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. And we did plan on having Adam Meakin pop in, but seeing how it is Friday the 13th, you know, scary. Ooh. Here we go.
I had a very bad day, and I was gutted I didn't get to join you guys, but so luckily Rob was there to save the day, I heard. So
well, you were missed. We would have loved to have you, and hopefully we can get up there on Tuesday next week. That'll be great.
Yeah, looking forward to it, guys. Looking forward to it.
And Mr. John Savage.
He's back.
John Savage, how are you, sir?
Oh, I'm very well, Josh, and hello to everyone. Welcome. Hello, James. We can hear you now.
Yeah, I'm on the iPhone again. Thanks, guys. Having technical difficulties today. Pleasure to be here.
That's cool. You might as well talk while you can, mate. Say hello.
Yeah, tell us where you've been all week.
How is everybody? I've been busy. I've been doing kind of been grinded by the outside world a bit, just doing obligations for the stuff Walt knows all about benefits and that kind of thing, and it's just frustrating, wear you down. So I'm happy to be here. It looks like I won the struggle, and I'm gonna get what I needed, but it's unfortunate that the people in the places that are supposed to be, there to help, a lot of the times they can't, or they make it a real difficult process, and it shouldn't be that way. But unfortunately,
James, just for the sake of people who don't know what the arse you're going on about, in terms of James is, as far as I'm aware, having issues in terms of your studio. What you meaning to?
No, I was actually just talking about that. That's going on, which is heart-wrenching.
Are we talking about the censorship?
No, we're actually talking about health and government benefits and disability benefits for actual life to live, like disability live allowance benefits and stuff. So
your third kick in the nuts at the moment.
I'm dealing with I mean, not to upset anybody, but it's like a 5-alarm fire drill I'm going on about. And I'm really happy to be here because you guys are always it's such a relief to talk to like-minded people, brothers, and to get some love back in, because like I paid into this stuff for years. I used to make very good money. And, I always, respect that we take care of those that need it. So for me to actually need it and to see like how unfortunate it is that other people have maybe taken advantage to the point where regular caring folks have to give you the third eye just because of abuse, it gets a little hard. Like it shouldn't have to be this hard for people that are sick. So anyways, that's my little rant.
I'll add to that, James. I'm suggesting the amount that possibly you would be asking to draw off the state is well shy short of the amount that you paid back in the day in taxes.
Oh, I at one time, and I say this with absolutely no dignity or pride, like that gets knocked away. But I was in the hundreds of thousands for the last 5 years in income before cancer, and then being disabled from surgery has left me. So literally I have seen both sides of the coin and can relate to a lot of it. And I'm happy that I'm not in that world anymore, but I'm also sad because now that I'm here, so many bloody people need help, man. Like they really do. Like, it's tough. So anyways, my cheeriness. How's everybody else? I'm on the spot. My face is red. Look at me. You've got me. You got me all flushed. But
good to hear your voice, James.
Good to see you, brother. We missed you.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad things are getting better.
Love you guys.
Sure, I'm glad they're getting your benefits straight, man. Trust me, I've dealt with it myself.
Yep.
So we have a pretty special guest with us today. This is by far one of my favorite flat earthers.
Good to see you, James.
But before I jump into that, we have some future flat earthers out there listening in the car right now on their way down to Florida. So I just wanted to give a big shout out to Layla and Dalen, who are in the car listening on a road trip going to Florida with their moms. So I just wanted to let you know that there's lots of information headed your way. So I want you to keep your ears open so that you can take a lot of this info back to your science teacher. Because
hey, Layla. Hey, Dalen.
Hello. We're glad you're listening.
So just remember, the Earth is flat, whether your teacher will tell you about it or not. She may not even know, but you can believe that there is no curvature out there and there is no motion. So that pretty much leaves very room for doubt as to what the actual shape is not. It is not a ball. It is not a spinny pear in space. So that being said, we got that out of the way. Hashtag spinny space pear. That being said, we have an artist on our hands today. Again, one of my favorite flat earthers. I ran across him very early in my search, and there was just something about his voice that just really drew me to him. I don't know if it was the calm, the peace that he just exudes, but yeah, I've been a fan ever since. So I just wanted to welcome everybody, Mr. Antonio Suberats, and thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome, I say in my mellowest voice. Thanks, guys. You said earlier you have a special flat earther. You don't. You have another flat earther. Yeah, I am another flat earther. Absolutely, because this place is flat. And once you realize and you start testing and looking closely, you see, it's like, dude, this place really is flat. The globe really is just an illusion. And that's it. That's what it comes down to. By the way, I wanted to ask, sorry, I didn't catch your name. The dude who's filling out the paperwork for the benefits.
James.
Hey, so
James.
I'm having a bit of a geek out here. I'm sorry. I'm going to be honest. I'm actually almost shaking a bit. Antonio, I didn't know you were going to be here. Dude, I love you, man. You literally, you freaking made me laugh like almost squeaker in my pants when I seen that the first time. You're amazing. Thank you for being here.
I was listening to the Red's Rhetoric video you put out a few days ago, and I was listening to that yesterday. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, it was an oldie, wasn't it?
Was that old? I only listened to it a couple of days ago.
Yeah, I had a right flashback, mate. I'm thinking, what's going off there?
A year ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, was it that long ago? I only listened to it yesterday, and about the sun not moving. He reckons it doesn't move.
Yeah.
Well,
the
relative to what?
Yeah.
The actual hangout was about 3 hours. I condensed that because, and that was the second time I edited that video and uploaded it. The first time I showed how many times they muted me. They must have muted me around 50 times in the hangout. Okay. But when I put it up there, people are like, dude, you're so patient. Oh, it was making me anxious. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take away the anxiety from it. So I did. I took away, because I was getting freaking stressed. I was doing deep breathing and everything, you know? But yeah, it's when you have somebody who's so convinced that they're on a globe and you point something out to them that makes them go, ah, shit, that doesn't make sense. They can't deal with it, and they go into what we know is cognitive dissonance. One of the points he makes, which we all know, is centrifugal and centripetal motion are based on a fixed object. So the circling is fixed. When you move that, which was my whole point, which is why first I spoke about those two, fictitious forces, and then about the sun moving. It's not static, so it's not a fixed point.
Dude, you were so far ahead of them, you didn't even take them to get to that point of explanation, from my understanding. I was constantly frustrated when you talk about frustration, that they weren't even close to comprehending that if you spin something on a string and you move your hand, it all turns to shit.
Yeah.
But basically, excuse my French, I've ruined the show again. Yeah, but do you get me? But then. Yeah. That was the point that all back then, and I kind of analyze stuff, and that's the thing that I think we constantly comment on here is the level of opposition's the wrong word, but the quality of the opposition is so far behind that they seem to neglect the fact that we did what they did a long time before we stood up as flat earthers. And I only blow a bit of smoke, mate, but as Walt alluded to, respect to you, fella. You're one of the first people I remember seeing and standing up there and saying these crazy things. So, yeah, we are all flat earthers and we are all the same. There are no leaders. But respect, fella, you were one of the first people I saw and
Antonio,
took inspiration from.
Can I stop Adam blowing smoke? And I'll just say, yeah, I was watching it. It was awesome. Could you give us like a rundown, like in the eloquence that you're renowned for, of what it was you were trying to get across to Red's Rhetoric? Obviously, in just a small rundown, that would be awesome for anyone who couldn't quite even handle the cut edited version for anxiety and or just can't be bothered to listen to anything Red's Rhetoric says. But yeah, please.
Sure. Okay, so the heliocentric model is based on the principle that you can isolate motions and you can say the sun is fixed, and because it's fixed, gravity has a pulling motion that counteracts this pulling away motion of spin. That's what it says. Okay, so the centripetal motion, or the centripetal force, would be the force that a string exerts on a ball that's spinning, or if you're on a ride, like the wall of death or any of these spinning things where you're forced onto the wall, or even your tumble dryer, your washing machine, when it's spinning fast, the actual shape that the clothes push themselves to mold themselves to, so the drum in your washing machine, the drum itself is offering the centripetal, which counteracts the centrifugal, which is the pushing away force. So in the universe, spin causes this spinning awayness, and gravity offers this pulling backness. This is based on the principle of the thing that is doing the pulling back and the pushing away being fixed. So like you was mentioned earlier, if you spin a string or a yo-yo, whatever, around your hand, as long as your hand is relatively fixed, you know, you're going to be moving it enough to cause a bit of a spin. As long as that's fixed, you're going to spin and describe a circle, no problem. But the minute you start moving that around, this circle stops being an orbit, any kind of rational orbit. That's what I was getting at. I was saying, look, guys, your model's broken. Your model says the Earth orbits the sun as if the sun was static, but your model also says the sun is not static. It's weaving up and down along the I think it's the ecliptic of the galaxy, and along the arm of the galaxy too. So it's not a fixed central point to offer the centrifugal and centripetal balance. That's what it was.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Yeah, and they didn't. Do you think Reds knew where you were coming from?
Yes, he got it. He got it.
I think he'd come across that before, I think.
Well, when he said relative to what, that's when he got it. He got it because he knew that if he isolates it and says, well, if you consider the sun to be the center of the solar system, which means not moving, then sure, no problem. That's why I was refusing to be pinned down, and why eventually I said, okay, relative to space, which is where motion happens. Okay, relative to that. And he had to say, no, it's not moving. Like, well, yes, it is. You know, and in the whole hangout,
nothing is static in space, in their space, is there? I mean, it's just impossible, basically.
Not only is nothing static, but there's also no central point at which, like even the beginnings, the origins of the Big Bang, in their theory, even that is not static. There's no stationary point anywhere in the universe, according to them, in their cosmology. It's the whole thing, fantasy.
Mate, you speak like you have known forever. And I don't want to ask the question of how long you've known it's flat, but you speak and you argue like you've known it forever.
Okay, well, what it is this: I was very into space, incredibly. Read lots of science fiction. I urge people to read for science fiction, even when it's off-world. I read The Songs of Distant Earth by Arthur C. Clarke. It's an awesome story, an off-world story. So I was very...
Dude, just a quick question. Yeah. How long have you been knowing the Earth's flat?
It's, around the end of 2015, so not that long.
No, similar.
Yeah, most of us kind of the clue. Well,
so you're really cocky then, because that's similar. That's similar to I think a lot of us here, and you're out there straight away shouting the verse.
Well,
it depends how much research you do, though. Really, I mean, if you put in every hour of every day for months on end, then you can be cocky and you can come out quick. It doesn't take long to learn flat Earth. You can do it in a month, but you won't sleep for the whole bloody month. Or you can take it over 2-3 years, or be like other people that know it is, but don't want to say.
That's when we all met, John. I done a lot of research, and if I didn't have met you guys, I'd still be sat on my own doing this. There's a lot of other research that I do on my own. Yeah, if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be out there. I wouldn't have come out of the closet. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't be. That's not true. I'd still talk to people as I always do, but I wouldn't be engaging in a media form of.
Well, the reason that as soon as I got it, I thought I've got to help these guys, because there were very few people at the time. There was Mark Sargent hadn't finished his clues. There was D. Murphy 25. There were a number of them, but there were very few and far between. So Eric Dubay, Geronism, the clues, Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole, was already making stuff. So there were already people bringing attention to it and highlighting various different things. And what I saw was that there was a lack of people, that they needed more people. More people were needed. So at the same time, just total separate, there was a whole lot of clamor about celebrity and the Kardashians and a whole bunch of artificial, can we say, bullshit?
Bullshit.
Absolutely.
Okay. Totally synthetic, crass, meaningless artificiality and celebrity. Okay, celebrity used to be somebody recognized for a remarkable quality, an admirable quality. That's what celebrity used to be. Now it was just complete crap. So I thought, right, if what they're doing, the instruments that orient and shift our kind of social engineering, if what they're doing is they're bringing down the idea of celebrity, then I'm going to jump into this YouTube celebrity bullshit and say, hey guys, you know, all these celebrities that you see in the magazines, they're just fucking not, they're just normal people. I'm a normal person. You're a normal person. Put yourself out there. If you have something that you can contribute, put yourself out there. And I did.
Adam is not a normal person, mate. You know, where you'll realize that in a couple of hours' time.
But no, you make a good point there, Antonio. And I think what you brought to the show was, well, a unique perspective from my point of view. I think I'm quite, what would it be, left-brained, sort of practical sort of side of things. You brought a sort of a right-brained, creative, artistic side to it, that is in the same way that Rory Cooper did with my perspective, and he was able to animate it, which was amazing. But just a small blow for you then, it was when you covered the issue that I was trying to raise in my gyroscope videos, and you used a CD and a pencil, or a CD and a straw, and I was like, oh my god, how simple is that? But it's so visual and obvious. Well, obvious to you, not me. But that was my stumbling block, was trying to get across what it was that I was showing, and you did it perfectly. So there you go.
Well, I have to say, I only used a CD and a rod because I didn't have a gyroscope. Otherwise, I would have used the gyroscope.
Ah, you know? Yes, you got a surprise for us later, though, haven't you?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Antonio,
James.
Sorry, just to answer your question. My name is James. I'm the guy with the forms, and then I was going to say to John the hours that we spent trying to come up with a way to show the gyroscope, which you did with a CD and a pencil, but John Savage and I spent weeks trying to translate that.
I spent so many hours trying to explain it to you, and then suddenly it went click, didn't it, at some point? I think it might have been after you saw Antonio's video.
I think it was. I think it probably was. Yeah, obviously. Or
there you go. So tip of the hat there.
The thing is, I grew up in Spain, yeah? And at the time, Spain, the level of technology in Spain, we had toys just like any other Western country, but we were a backward Western country. I was born in the era of Franco. Franco, the dictator, was still alive. So we didn't have Ataris, and actually my cousin had an Atari, and we used to play Pong, you know, but things were very limited at the time. So we played with more traditional toys, one of which is a gyroscope. It looks like a
spinny top.
Say again?
Like a spinny top. I know those ones. They were.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know exactly.
But these are traditional for Catalonia, and they're shaped like a pine cone. Okay, that's the shape. You put the string at the top, you wind it all the way down to the bottom. You hold it with your fingers like a yo-yo. You put it around your middle finger, and you throw it with force. Okay, once it's spinning, once you've got at it, you throw it, and you have competitions where you try to throw one and have it hit the ground, bounce, and land on top of another. Okay, so you do all kinds of stuff. You put a piece of paper underneath it, you lift it, you place it on top of 2 or 3, to which you've already done this, and you get 2 or 3 standing as a tower of gyroscopes. So we did a lot of playing with gyroscopes. They always fascinated me, and when I could get my hands on a gyroscope that was one of these crank gyroscopes where you crank it to speed it up and then play with it, I was always fascinated with them, you know. So that's where like the understanding of the gyroscope came from.
They were the original spinning tops, weren't they? Some of them had flashy lights. They were made of tin or whatever. They were brilliant. I remember them. Yeah, totally. So you mentioned something that you grew up in Catalonia or were born there. Was that right?
I was born in.
So we'll have to get into that a bit later.
Cool. I was going to say. Oops, sorry.
Sorry, mate. You mentioned before you'd bought a gyroscope as well.
I did. I bought a super precision gyroscope that's not a toy. You know, like a gun that shoots bullets. It's not a toy. You know.
How long did it take you to get that?
Well, shall we inform people of this is something that's been going on IRM for a while. John Savage is the only known member of IRM who can get ownership of one. And it was something we featured when I went to get one, saw the website, went to the website and saw the excuse put there that they would stop taking orders, etc., etc. And it was something that me and John mentioned last week between ourselves, and we had a quick look. I think we had a look on the show. I mentioned it on the show, and I had a quick look and didn't talk about it on the show, but it was still the same web page, and I didn't bother to fill the email response to say I wanted one in, but apparently you have, dude, and please carry on.
Yeah, well, the first time I looked for it was about the time I made the gyroscope video, and already by then they had the wait, did they already have the? No, they didn't quite have the embargo. You know, we've got a large order and we're not taking orders until we filled it portion, which is what they had later. I took a look. I saw how much they cost. I thought, damn, I can't afford one just yet. I opened the Patreon hoping that people would say, there you go and buy one. They didn't. So I had to wait and save and save. And by the time I did have enough, they'd put this caveat, which was, we can't fill what they're saying is this French YouTuber did a video about the gyroscope, and due to this, the guy has like 2.3 million followers. Due to this, they had a huge number of gyroscopes on back order, and they wouldn't take any more orders until they filled that. If you were interested, like you said, send an email. Yeah. So I took a look and I thought, oh, okay, I'll just wait a few weeks. I took a look again, still the same, you know, waiting a couple of weeks between each time I looked. And eventually I thought, dude, how long is this going to go? Is this just a reason? Is this paranoia kicked in? Are they just doing this so they don't have to send any to flat earthers? What is this? And eventually I saw they say about the email. So I sent them an email, and it was, I think, about 6 weeks of waiting. I went back and sent another message, another email. And a couple of weeks ago, I get a message back saying, hey, guys, saying, hi, Antonio, thanks for your interest. We're now taking orders. So it's like, quick, sent the order. So I now have one. And we'll be making videos. Can you see that
on the screen?
Yes.
That's live. That's what the screen, that's what the website right now is saying. I'm trying to get it bigger, but I can't.
Yeah. So it's still saying that.
Yeah, so saying we have had a huge number of orders for the gyroscope due to a popular YouTube Dr. Nosman in France reviewing it. We've decided to suspend sales. That makes a lot of sense. We've decided to suspend sales until we can catch up with the production and dispatch. If you want to purchase one, click here. Blah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
John, have they gone up in value? Like I'm just throwing numbers out here. Were they $300 when you got yours, and now they're $1,000? Have they shot up in price?
I don't know. Ask Antonio. How much did you pay for it? Did you get it with the gimbals?
Yes.
I think I paid $135 for mine in Christmas 15.
With the gimbals?
With the gimbals, yeah.
Close to that, approximately the same.
Yeah, that's good enough. That's good enough. Yeah, that's surprising. That's actually surprising.
Yeah, well, you know, the guy, it's an engineering firm. Oh, sorry.
It's all right.
I was just saying it's an engineering firm, and they're like, dude, we've got loads of orders, brilliant. They're not usually, I've known several people who worked for engineering firms. They're not as cutthroat as the companies that make more meaningless things, you know? If they have steady, then they don't really hike their prices like, in fact, it happens with technology. The price comes down with technology too.
I had quite an interesting email sort of tennis match with the company owner. I think his name's Glenn Turner. Yeah, he was quite, he was amenable enough, you know. He wasn't immediately calling you a retard and this sort of thing, but you could see it, you could feel it in the voice. And he was currently writing a book on Foucault pendulums. So I was, yeah, he didn't take too kindly to me, but yeah, he's a nice enough guy. He actually left Twitter after talking to me about this on Twitter. I don't think anyone's ever heard from him again on Twitter. So yeah, quite interesting.
Interesting. I tell you what, I'd love to see somebody write a book about the Foucault pendulum at the equator, swinging north to south.
Right.
Expand.
Okay. Well, the equator is not moving in a circle to which the pivot point of the pendulum is at an angle. It's moving in a straight line for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, on the fictional ball. Yeah.
On the fictional ball. So if anything, maybe they would say that at the end of the swing, the pendulum, the weight becomes fractionally lighter, perhaps. I don't know. But it can't precess. You know, there's no chance. It's not.
They'll pull something out, like the Fresno, whatever it was, they pulled out for Mickelson Morley or Mickelson Gale or whoever it was. But yeah, I mean, there's a classic quote, isn't there, that says, you know, if pendulums were registering the spin of the Earth, then there wouldn't be a single plumb bob pendulum anywhere on the planet that is still.
Yeah.
We'd all be living in Dr. Seuss houses.
Hey, do you want to hear something funny about the guy that owns the company, the Glenn guy that you mentioned?
Oh, yeah, go on. Okay,
so I get my gyro, I put it all together, and I spin it, and it's not hissing. It's doing like a... I'm thinking, there's a heck of a lot of movement there. What the hell? So I spin it a few times, and there's this... until it gets to when the axis is vertical, it hisses, but when it's not, it's doing this vibration. What the hell? Have they sent me a duff one? So I try various different things. I make sure everything's tight, and same thing. It's going. What the? So I contact him, you know, and very politely say words to the effect of, "Yo, dude, you've sent me a duff one. What do you want to do?" I've tightened everything, and when it's vertical, when the central axis is vertical, it hisses very faintly, and when it's not, there's a vibration sound. Call me as soon as you can. And they send it on Skype, by the way, because I've got their Skype details on the message. on the website. So I then look at it again and I'm thinking, oh, damn it, am I going to have to wait weeks again to get another one? So I make sure everything's really tight. And that's when I notice this screw that's on the other side, that's a straight edge. And I tighten that. It's not tight, okay? I didn't want to play around with it too much. I tightened it. Oh, okay, spun it. Now it's perfectly fine. So I thought, oh, damn it, I've got to send her like I'm a retard message now to this dude. So I did. So I said, you know where I said that I fixed everything tight? Well, I hadn't seen that. So, yes, that happened.
But there is an intrinsic fault in those gyros, though, that I noticed, and so did Rob Durham. Which is the reason why he had that sort of luminous red blob of Play-Doh on the side of his. That they're not balanced. Once you remove the motor, then it becomes imbalanced, which is utterly useless for a gyroscope. So, well, I mean, to be fair, Glenn Turner did say that. Anyway, they will send you a precision-made screw that'll fit into where the motor attaches for free of charge. Just send them an email. But yeah, that was a bit of a clanger, I thought.
Yes, I saw the same thing, and I thought, oh man, I don't want to risk trying to price this off. You know, that flathead, in case that's just an extra thing that you can. I don't know why it would be there,
or something like everything else, or something. Springs just go boing, and 100 different pieces come out, and you're like, fuck.
Yeah, but I thought that it was maybe something you're supposed to take off. Maybe it's like a half turn thing to take it off, and everything's fine. But maybe it isn't. Okay, but what it was doing was definitely making it precess on its own. Okay. So it's like, like you're saying, it's imbalanced. I'm thinking, oh, dude, it's imbalanced. So eventually I thought, you know what? I need to make a battery pack to run it like you guys did, like you and Rob did, like you did actually, with a battery pack balanced, so I can have it running continuously rather than have it from a cable, because of the objections that people bring to that. So I thought, I know I need to make something that will go there. So I know I need to make something that will balance it. So it's okay, you know, I'll leave it as is. It still serves to demonstrate various different things. It just is not fine enough to stand absolutely still when.
Well, the battery packs are easy to make. I mean, you just go down a model, a model car shop and pick up a four gang AA battery pack. You just snip the wire to the motor and then connect them up to the battery pack. You can stick a switch in there if you want, but I wouldn't, because it'll add more fuel to the detractors saying, well, that's unbalanced, blah blah, and all this sort of stuff. And that runs for about 2 hours actually. A lot longer than I thought it would.
It's the attachment from that battery pack to the gyro. That's, what thread do I need? How do I attach that to the gyro itself? So
what I used was you've got, when you get the gyroscope, you get a bunch of additional rods and bars and weights and all sorts of stuff on there. I just used one of the rods and attached it opposite the motor, and then elastic banded the battery. Have you seen my reply to Sly?
Yes.
Okay, well that's got quite good pictures and close-ups, and
I should have just
taken it all apart and taking it all apart and measuring it and weighing it and all the rest of it. But it's simple. But the problem I came across was, although the motor is 6 volt And by the way, I do have a lead band riptide around the motor, which I move left and right, up and down the motor in order to finely tune the balance. But yeah, I can explain that another time.
Yeah.
But what was I saying? Bugger. Yes, what I found was that the 4 AA batteries adding up to 6 volt doesn't bring the same pitch sound. The sound, you know, when you fire it up on the motor and you leave it attached for say 10 minutes or 5 minutes, you get a very consistent whining sound from the gyro itself.
Yes, it's almost a whistle.
Yeah, exactly. So it comes out at a pitch, and you don't get that same high pitch as you do when you're running it through the main. So what I'm currently working on is, I think it's a 7.4 volt battery from a Canon camera, and that's where I've got stuck, because I'm trying to attach the electrical connections from the Canon battery to the motor without banjaxing the Canon battery, because it's come out of my only DSLR, so I don't want to bollocks that up. So yeah, it's still a work in progress, and I must say I'm staring at it now, and I haven't touched it for.
Antonio, you said that you were
6
going
months.
to. You said that you were going to change things up a bit because you were reading the comments on John's video. So what changes are you thinking you're going to do?
Well, first, on the videos I'll be making, the first thing I'll be doing is dispelling all of the erroneous messages, of which there were lots, saying things like, you have it oriented the wrong way. It's like, no, dude, you don't understand gyroscopes if that's what you're thinking. Okay, so demonstrating how those messages are mistakes, just so that those people don't come and make the same leave the same comment on my videos. Okay, so I'll be demonstrating when the gyroscope, when the central axis is vertical, it's not going to show the sidereal rotation, because the axis is on the same plane as the moon. Yeah. Oh, right. Cool. I'm watching. Ah, right.
Okay. Can you hear me? I'm stood here crouching. What I'm holding here is the next phase, which is what you'll see is can you see that? You can see loads of turntables.
Yes. And belts.
And gearing up and down. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it down and then I can talk to you.
Yeah.
You've finally got someone to send it to there, Adam. You can get it out of your shed or off the kitchen table. And
I'm buying the bugger myself, mate. I'm buying the bugger.
Beware, Antonio. Incoming.
Okay.
He's going to send it to you.
No, well, I tell you what. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, as we always do on here, we take valid criticism on board, and some of the stuff that our friend Red Rhetoric did back then, and sometimes things take a while. As you can see, that's all been built by hand. Some of the criticism we took on board was that, and it was as John proved in one of his rebuttal videos, it was criticism we'd already made ourselves, is that any form of the clock rotation systems that happen, they tend to be gear based. So what you've got there is, well, I've not fine tuned it to 24 hours. I've actually got it to 28, which is sufficient to prove the point. But I'm not quite happy. I want 24.
28's better, mate. 28's better because it's a lower angular turn per hour.
But it's not right, John. So that's what's annoying me.
Well, none of us know what's right. So, well.
Yeah.
We have to be perfect, don't we, John? Everything that we do, we have to be perfect at it, where they can just throw any old shit out, and we have to buy it.
I mean, we can make it 24 hours, and they say, dude, what are you doing? You know, it's 23.53 hours.
It's a sidereal day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the funniest I've heard is people saying, well, when they're criticizing it, is that the Earth moves smoothly. It doesn't tick like a clock. And it's like, can you prove the Earth moves first before you start telling me how the fucking moves?
John, for 2 years on Twitter, I've been fighting with these people telling me that the Earth is spinning. It's spinning. Oh, my goodness, it's spinning. Well, this last 2 weeks, I've gotten 2 different tweets from ballers explaining to me that, well, it's actually just barely moving.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
What do you say to that, Antonio?
I say, if it's spinning so slowly, why is it supposed to be pear-shaped? Isn't that because it's spinning so fast that it's forced the south of the equator to expand more than the north? You know? Come on.
Because it's been spinning for 4.5 billion years.
Doesn't matter. Really slowly. So what I was going to use, guys, was one of these. You see, it's a 24-hour mechanism. Yes, it's gear, but it's not gear like the clock. I was going to use the same CD. First, I was going to show it, and this was just going to be to demonstrate that it moves along, you know, the base, that the friction bearing is the force of the gyroscope, the rigidity is so strong that the friction bearing doesn't cause it any problem. I mean, the friction bearing would have to be very, very tight to cause it a problem. So this is what I'm going to use just to show that. But then I'm going to use a equatorial mount to show what it should do.
Nice.
So that's it.
They're not cheap.
No, well, a friend of mine, one of my global friends, has got 2 of them. He's got there are 2 different types. There's one like a standard one for star trails, and then there's a more technologically advanced one, which means it cheats a little bit better. That has an extra axial point and it's motorized in a different way and all kinds of stuff. And he said that I can borrow it. So yeah, sure.
Nice. Like, lovely.
Nice. Yes.
Because I was looking at them as well, and they were coming in quite pricey. So yeah, as I speak, next door in the workshop there is there's a CD hot glued to a excuse me, to an aerosol can lid, which nicely fits on top of the 24-hour plug timer. If you put the little metal bits in the right place, then it fits on absolutely snugly. And I'm just trying to get this battery working, where the wires to the motor are so thin. I think it's burning it out or something. But yeah, well, brilliant. I'm so glad someone else is taking up the mantle as well and going to carry on.
Well,
I'd love to talk to Rob about it. Are you in touch with Rob?
No. Only a couple of comments here and there. Mine didn't come with a power outlet, you know, to a wall plug. Mine just came with a battery pack.
Yeah. Sorry, I hacked mine. I cut it off and stuck a mobile phone charger, like a 1990s Nokia mobile phone charger. I think it gives out 7, it might be 7.2 volts, something like that. Yeah, so I mean the battery, otherwise you're going to burn through batteries. That thing only runs on them for about 2 hours a time. So yeah, I quickly got rid of the battery pack.
Well, this, by the way, with the pins knocked down, it will still play, but it will still move, and the CD fits totally snugly, you know. So hot glue. Yeah,
and the CD also fits the gimbal legs perfectly, with about a couple of millimeters to spare all the way around. It's beautiful. Sorry, Adam, carry on.
I'm just being a geek because this. You said it's not a clockwork mechanism inside that. What is that?
No. I said it's not like the clockwork mechanisms on the clock, which tick kind of aggressively, which is what Red's objection was. This, you can hear this cranking pretty much. If you listen carefully, you can hear that it's going. It's continuously. The gear exchange is finer.
I took one of them apart,
So
Antonio.
it's still is it still a toothed gear?
I've not ripped it apart.
I took it apart. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go on.
Right, it's a shaft with a spiral like a screw, like a drill bit on it. So that just turns, and then it's linked to another whatever that turns. Yeah. Sorry, that was explained like a 5-year-old.
Okay. No. So it's still tooth. So the point of what we're trying to build there is these are bearings off of a weightlifting machine. So they're what you turn the you know the weights that I don't go to the gym. I have no idea. But from within that, I've took some tubing. So what we're trying to do is create fully circular motion. So at no point is there any form of change. And all we're trying to do is down gear that circular motion as opposed to down gear a cogged motion, which is stepped by nature. And that's why I was just curious as to what's in there. So it is being geeky and responding to the criticism to the nth, but that's kind of all I was trying to demonstrate.
That's really cool. What you've described, John, is a torque screw, a torque gear, which is the spiral gear. So there's no tick point to it.
That's right.
The contact is continuous. Not to what you're doing, I think is really cool, because when you set it up, especially if you video it with like pizzazz, it's like, dude, see if you can replicate this, to people like Red's Rhetoric.
I don't
do that. Anything Adam has, it is zazz. He's known for his zazz.
Hey, but by the way, just a slight change of topic, just for a brief moment. You were saying about the benefits that you're applying for. Can I ask you if you have already submitted the paperwork, or if you have the paperwork with you at home?
That's for you, James, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I was wondering if we were going to get back to that. That's good. Now, where did I put them? I had them all in a nice sticky here. For
you have not submitted them yet.
Hold on.
No,
I haven't. I mean,
brilliant. Brilliant. Okay, you can really, you can chill, like really. Okay, be thankful that you have not already submitted them. Okay, because I'm going to give you some advice now that they don't give you. Okay. I had to do this. I worked with people with mental health problems and with learning disabilities, various different disabilities, and filling out the disability living allowance, which is what we get here in the UK, was part of what I had to do. When you're answering the questions, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. When you're answering the questions, the people who are asking the questions and the way the questions are formed are really specific. They are to dismiss people who are just trying to claim it just, for free money, and people who really need it. Okay. And what they're asking is on your worst day. So whatever you read, imagine that it says on your worst day, can you blah, blah, blah. How far, blah, blah. That's okay. Always have that in your mind. On your worst day. All of the questions on your worst day. They don't want to know about when you're not so unwell. It's not a apply for not being so unwell benefits. It's apply for being unwell benefits.
Can I just interject and say thank you very much for that? That's a very educated position. And I wish I'd been told that. I wish I'd been told that at the beginning. However, I did it the other way, and that's actually the reason why the insurance company has terminated my benefits, because I had a follow-up after, the mandatory, it was I think 24 months, and then I had a review. And because I answered the questions about my day-to-day, okay, so Like, for example, I walk with a severe limp. I wake up with insane swelling in my groin. I had a dichotomy done to my lower groin, had a couple of tumors removed, and had a sanguine hernia replacement at the same time. And both of those things, like they think the hernia shifted, or the filament they used, and then so whatever. Regardless, I have nerve damage. I have problems, with urinary and bathroom stuff. So it's quite intense. But with that, I told them the truth. I mean, it's been a couple of years. I push myself. I go to the pool. I walk very slow with a stick, but I push myself. So they took that as I'm great, I'm recovered, and that was like my best. They took my best and didn't even consider the worst. And
Yes.
it broke my heart, Antonio. They literally broke my soul that day. I was not expecting that, because I even went so far as to, like, I opened up about everything, even the sexual problems and that kind of details. Like, well, I'm not going to get into them here, but there's a lot to this. So for me to go out and pour my heart out, that's really exposed me. And then they use that and said goodbye. So fool me twice, shame on me. I have been to several councils and meetings. I've been doing reading, just like my flat earth research. And I was actually told last week the same gem that you just told me, and wish I had known that before.
Yeah.
But,
I think the moral of the story there is that honest people are too honest, aren't they?
Yes, but it's also so these questions are composed by psychologists. It's not just clerks in some administrative office. And
that's interesting.
And they know
Tavistock stuff, isn't it?
Yes, they know that people of a certain mentality will want to appear better than they are, especially men. Okay, because we're supposed to be more physical, so we will lean towards how well can you do this thing. Okay, the truth is, majority of the time, not very well. Some of the time, not so bad, and we say not so bad. Yeah, that's just how we tend to be. Okay, and
it's
they know this.
Egotistical blackmail, isn't it?
It is.
They word the questions knowing that most people will say, how are you feeling today? Yeah, I'm feeling fine. When actually you're feeling like shit, and that's exactly what they do. But I can back up what you say, because I was I was representing a friend of mine in court, and he was had himself a solicitor and was filling out a form for a solicitor. With his solicitor, and that's exactly what he was saying. He was like, answer this question, and my mate would be like, well, yeah, I'm okay at that, yeah, not too bad, and he's like, on your worst day, and he was using those exact words. Well, and that stuck.
This really is what they want to know, because so on the one hand, you've got they have a small mandate, try and filter out as many as possible. But on the other hand, you've got the white knights in those organizations who are like, no, that's wrong. We're supposed to be providing a service, because these are human beings who, as part of being our brethren, they deserve this. Not to go into the whole straw man, legal name fraud and all of that, but they say, no. We want to be able to help people. That's part of our task. So they get told, yes, well, these questions are for those people who are so unwell that they have no option but to say so unwell. Okay. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, that will do. It won't have been, the questions would not have been just written and rubber stamped. There will have been debated over each question. So they really are asking you to pay attention to the name of the forms and what it tells you. Pay close attention to it. They're not going to say there on your worst day, because that would just give the whole thing away. But look at what you're applying for, So if it's to do with mobility, they want to know about your lack of mobility, not your best days when you have an extraordinary mellow good day. They want to know about the worst day, the day that you can't get up. That's what they want to know about. And like they genuinely do want to know about it. And you can answer it absolutely honestly. Your worst day, this is the situation.
You really hit the nail on the head, though, Antonio, about the pride and ego, especially in the province I'm at. Like, it's big money, big oil money out here. Like, and you know, the men definitely really want to take. Like, I was a provider. That's what I do. I'm a provider, and yeah, you really hit it on the head too. It's ego quite a bit, I think. So
yeah. Well, you got some of these guys will lose a finger, but they can still do the job, and they will say, "Okay, I will take the compensation, but I would rather continue to work than take the compensation and go on these benefits because, of course, they get paid so much more, but also because they want to still be that massive provider." And guys that work on oil wells and rigs, they provide well for the families, you know.
If I didn't have my faith and my family here, well, I call them family, but my brothers here, if I didn't sink into Iron Realm and into flat Earth, my life would be completely different. You know, I'm very, very lucky and grateful that I was able to fill the lack of providing and doing and harness some of that brokenness and put it towards other people. So I started, you know, volunteering at my community church. I started serving those even more desperate and hungry and weaker than I am. And that really gave me a boost and kept me going. And then the boys at the Realm here are just, you know, they're my leaning staffs, right? So that's what's helped. And yeah, thank heavens for that, because hope's not in the biggest supply these days in the world, eh?
That's really cool. That's really cool. And if I can just say for everybody listening and everybody here, the fact that people are listening is telling us we're reaching somebody who might otherwise have been sat mouth open in front of the television. And we that are doing this are doing it not consciously for those people. We know that we might have been those people at some point in the past, but as a knock-on effect or a side effect of what we do is sooner or later we reach those people who detach from life into the bubblegum world of nonsense television, and if left to be swept up by the tide or to go with the flow, if left to that, they get to retirement age, and if they haven't been medicated to the point that they never regain their consciousness fully, if that's not what happens, some of them get to retirement age and wake up from the stupor and just realize they've just lost it all, wasted it all unconsciously, you know? And this is part of what drove me to do this. It's like, no, dude, I'm helping this.
They're so good at doing that nowadays too. They've been doing it for hundreds of years. They're so good at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just change tack for a minute? You posted a video a couple of days ago about Newton's third law. You've got the
French.
He's on in front of a whiteboard and he's talking about rockets not working in space.
Uh-huh.
Can I ask you to use the way that you speak about the space and in space and the way you look at it? Because many people out there will have seen Star Wars and they reckon rockets can work in space because of that. But
give you a chance to think, Antonio, whilst he asks you to describe that wicked video, because that was awesome, man. That video, I showed it to the brother-in-law tonight, guys. It was one of the first things I showed him, because I was shoving the air, and then shoving the side wall of the shed and showing the difference it had on me to him.
Mm-hmm.
That's sufficient help.
What?
Go ahead,
Adam, what
Antonio.
a guy used to say. And we all got together in January of 2016, and the catalyst for all of us in the panel here, other than you, Adam, was a guy called Yish, and he he was a big time flat earther, and he got us all together, and we all split because of rockets not working in space, and he believed that they still did. And he said that when there's an explosion, the explosion will go both ways. It'll push against one edge of the rocket, and it will propel the rocket forward. That was basically what he said. Basically, obviously, if you're in a vacuum, the way I see it, you see the explosion mainly being sucked straight out the back end of the bloody rocket. But he was saying, no, it's going to push the rocket. So, Antonio, how do you explain it?
Okay, when people say that, they're really talking about mass and mass changing form. So mass being converted into energy, and that energy pushing on the walls, the internal physical portions of the jet or the rocket, pushing that in exchange for pushing themselves out. Okay, what they don't mention is, first, if you were to take that situation and just allow the energy to leave rather than force it out, what would happen? In a vacuum of space, it would be not sucked out, but it would be expressed outwardly simply because of the pressure variance. Okay, so not to do with the force of the rocket, simple pressure would just suck the energy out. It would suck the juice out, the flame, it would suck. But the idea that within the region where that force meets physical matter, so if we look at a rocket going up, the top of the area where the jet is having an effect, okay, so be it the chamber or the outside of the jet, the topmost area, okay, at that point, there is also a bottommost point of that area. So if we think of inside the chamber where the force is generated and then strangulated, so it has to force itself through a smaller opening in order to gather that thrust, that valve, that point where it has to strangulate itself, that's also receiving force. So inside the chamber, this side, I don't know if you guys can see me, I'm talking with my hands in case guys can't see me. One portion of the chamber is receiving force, say, up. The other portion of the chamber is receiving force down from that same mass that's being converted into energy. So that's within the inside of the propulsion system. Now, the real question is between the inside and the outside, that borderline between the two. That's where the question actually, everything gets pinned down to that point. So at that point, there's no longer any force doing any pushing upwards or pushing downwards. It's simply an opening. Now, at that point, now you can call the vacuum and say, okay, vacuum, what do you do when you have an opening to something that has pressure? Pull. That's what it does. It just pulls everything. Or the pressure just...
Could I add to that just for a second?
Sure.
And me after that.
Excellent. Now, the point I'm alluding to is the video. Later on in the video, he brings out a little drone, a little quadricopter. Yeah. And he sets it up and he uses it and he puts it on a certain level of thrust, which exemplifies a certain level of output. And the little quadricopter goes up to a certain height, I don't know, foot and a half or something. And underneath it, he's got a sheet of cardboard. And what he actually does is he lifts the cardboard and you see the drone go up. Now, that might look like a bit of magic, but what it's actually demonstrating is that the thrust that's being generated is being generated by the mass underneath the thing that's doing the thrusting. Now, the only way that thing goes any higher with the amount of thrust it's got is by lifting a solid object underneath it. And hopefully that exemplifies that if the amount of lift is and thrust is only equivalent to the amount of something you can push against. So as Antonio was saying there at the end, if what you're thrusting into is a vacuum, there is no piece of cardboard underneath the little quadricopter. forever, there is never a point where the bit that's been thrust out ever meets something that has been thrust out before it. So no forward momentum in terms of the rocket itself is ever generated because of the vacuum.
That's absolutely, totally. And so in the same way as fire experiments, I forget the guy who made the video showing whether gunpowder and various other things can ignite. Yeah. The only thing that ignited were the things that created their own oxygen with which to ignite. In other words, they stopped the vacuum being a vacuum for the brief period that reaction was happening locally, you know. If you remove that, like that was just with fire, okay? If you remove that and you bring it into space, so it doesn't matter whether it's 1 centimeter away from the outermost reaches of our never-ending, you know, boundary-less atmosphere. Okay, when you get to the point where it's like, okay, now there's no more atmosphere, if we want to pretend that that happens, 1 centimeter, 1 millimeter would be exactly the same as pointing the rocket away from the Earth, you know, being in the middle of nowhere kind of thing.
You know those chambers where they put the rocket fuel that's got the self-igniting rocket fuel in there, and it still doesn't burn as it should. They're a great exemplifier of the power of the vacuum, because even within that small space, even though initially as the igniter molecule tries to heat up, as they then release to enable, as it's constructed to enable the oxygen molecule when it's free to become in contact with the igniting molecule, the power of the vacuum, even in a small chamber like that, pulls it so far away that atomically they don't react. All you see is a smoldering. And that's just a small scale vacuum that you can see that can stop rocket fuel igniting. Yeah. Okay. So imagine that in the real vacuum of the unreal space.
Unless you're Adam Savage.
Yeah. Not only is it a small scale in terms of in a small container, you know, like dimensions small, but the quality of the vacuum, it isn't vacuum, you know. So it's like it's very close to vacuum, but it's not complete vacuum. So
well, this is the point I wanted to raise, was that, you know, I've seen a number of experiments on YouTube, yada yada, with balloons and rockets and all sorts of things in a semi-vacuum, you know, I mean, as much of a vacuum as they can get it to. But the problem I see is that space, as we're told, is not just a vacuum, it's weightlessness too. So everything in the rocket is weightless. There's nothing, you know, how can, I mean, you say you're pushing against the inside of the rocket. The rocket is weightless, the air inside, the fuel is weightless. I mean, we can't, and we certainly can't recreate that on Earth to put in a YouTube video and show people, look, see, this works in space. I mean, I don't know what you think about that, the weightlessness part.
That's such a cool point. You know, where they say there's no up in space? Well, when I was describing my rocket, I said up. It's like, okay, the minute you leave Earth, there's no up. Okay, directionality is pretty much meaningless at that point, because when they say there's no up in space, they're also saying there's no down in space. If there's no up and no down, then you can't establish forward and backward either, or left and right. You've removed the dimensionality of reality. You've removed that.
Relative to what?
John, what I would say there in terms of rocket propulsion is that they are weightless, and weight is a dimension described in respect of gravity. What they aren't is massless. So the force we're talking in terms of rocket propulsion is when those two masses collide and the resultant forces that are generated from it. Now, what I alluded to earlier is that masses, whatever they are, they're obviously weightless, but whatever the masses are, they never collide because the vacuum of space precludes them from ever being able to get to the same position, because as soon as it ejects from the rocket matter, it becomes into the infinite void of space. So anything after that point will never become in contact with anything before that point.
Yeah, it dissociates.
Yeah, fair point, mate.
Yeah, it dissociates. And not only this, but if you think of Newton's third law, it dissociates. So you have the rocket and you have the fire, the jet, whatever. Imaginatively speaking, because it doesn't happen, and if it did, they would be able to demonstrate it properly in a vacuum, and they can't, and they haven't, because it doesn't. Now, it dissociates, so everything separates from everything else because it can. Okay, it's not held together by any kind of pressure. The heat has removed any kind of magnetic bonds or any electromagnetic, electrostatic bonds. So apart from the pressure, you have other things that might bond molecules together. Now all of those things are gone, so the things just totally disperse. Now with Newton's third law, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So you can say the rocket is there and the action is the thrusting thing and the reaction is the thrust. Say, okay, now the thing that did the reaction, that caused the reaction, which is the thrust, after the rocket has gone, that thing should still be causing an action which causes a equal and opposite reaction. What would that possibly be? What could the leftover thrust be causing? Because we know in our atmosphere, it causes a vortex. It leaves trails. It changes atmosphere. It causes condensation. What would it do in space? What would the subsequent reaction be?
Right.
None.
Let me explain that again in terms of that quadricopter. The reason the quadricopter goes off is that, and the only reason it only goes a foot, even though those blades are spinning so much, is that it's forcing so much air down. It's almost creating something solid in the amount of air it's pushing down. And in doing so, it's sitting on that solid layer of air. The point about a rocket is that's exactly how it works. But as soon as you get into space, there is nothing solid that can be created, because whatever has gone first can never be caught up by something that precedes, because the infinite vacuum of space pulls it away at an infinite speed into the infinite vacuum of space, away
Instant
from
equilibrium,
the much infinitely slower speed of the rocket jet propulsion output. Yeah, so it would never catch up with any atom that's got into the vacuum. So no solid layer can be created. So no thrust can ever be created. Totally.
And what he shows when he moves, so before he shows it, he explains that when he moves away the card, the thing will lose the columns on which it's supported, which now their foundation is this piece of card that he's holding a few inches underneath. When he moves that away, those are gone, and he drops to the ground, recreates them, and then starts to hover above. When a rocket left the atmosphere of the Earth, it would be the equivalent to this card being removed. So if we want to think we're on a ball with an atmosphere, the rocket would go out and then just poof. That's it. It has nothing more. Like
that's exactly what would happen.
That's it. If anything, it might travel with the momentum that it had,
for a while.
Yeah. It's just. But the Globalings love getting into these arguments, even though they know that they can't demonstrate it. They will still argue the toss.
But the rocket would be relative to the space and the sun, wouldn't it?
Uh-huh.
Sorry, John, go.
I was going to say, no, sorry. I was going to say, can I ask you, changing tack completely here, just wanting to pick your right brain, really, with someone who may not be spatially challenged. I made a claim on my gyroscope videos that everything on Earth revolves 360 degrees in 24 hours. And I was just wondering if you agree with that. And that's on the X, Y, and Z axis, all summing up to 360 degrees. I don't mean everything physically changes on one axis 360 degrees, but 360 degrees in total in 24 hours. So if you've stood on the North Pole without a tilt, let's say, keep things simple, then you would revolve 360 degrees. If you stood on the other pole, you'd revolve 360. If you were stood anywhere in between, there is nowhere on Earth that you could place yourself that did not revolve 360 degrees in 24 hours. And you don't necessarily have to answer now, but I just wanted to plant that into your head and see what you thought about that.
Well, I've thought about this before. You're right. Okay, if you're spinning around the axis, your motion relative to that axis will be 360 degrees. But when globelings argue with you, which they might, they have warped what a degree is, and are now calling on a different force, which is the motion of the Earth through space. In which case, those degrees are now being tacked on a matrix in space. And instead of making a circle, they are making it's like a sine wave through space. And they can claim anything they want to claim. They can just, if they want to stretch it out, because we're talking time versus motion, they can say, you know, they say we go around the galaxy every, I forget how many hundreds of thousands of years around the galaxy. That's just something they've said. They can stretch things out as far as they want.
And all of those motions have to be accounted for, unless, of course, all of those motions, strangely, are perfectly in alignment with the angular rotation of the Earth. Now, if all of they were, then they wouldn't be picked up. But I've never heard that claimed by, as you say, the globelings. Do you know what I mean? So, and if they weren't, then gyroscopes and everything would have to detect that, John. And it would variate the 360 degrees as well, because there would be, in some places, dependent on the direction of the movement, more than 360 degrees in 24 hours, and in some places less, because of the angular direction you're traveling.
I disagree. I think it
depends what you're being relative
to. I think it all adds up to 360 degrees, no matter where you are. When you're on the equator, you can set a gyroscope up on the equator so in such a way and orientation that it doesn't appear to move at all. However, you know, if you set it up at 12 o'clock and went back to it at 12 o'clock, then it should be 180. It will be 180 degrees. The feet will be 180 degrees in the different direction of where you started it. There's no, for me, there's no getting around this, no matter where you are. And if you go halfway up between the equator and the North Pole, you're going to be changing in 12 hours time. You're going to be the equivalent of 180 degrees out, whether that's in the X plus the Y and the Z axis. Yeah, but you're going to be 180 degrees out.
This is one of these reality versus the globe Earth paradigm nonsensical arguments where you're trying to balance, okay, what you were taught against what you know, and you
can take the Earth out of it, though, Adam.
So
you can take the Earth out of it.
So my question then is, what is the 360 rotating to? Did you get me? What are we rotating in relation to?
The axis, the spin axis of the ball. You can take it, you can say we're not talking about the Earth anymore. We're just talking about a rotating ball. You've got a ball in front of you and you're rotating it on an axis. Every single thing you put on that ball, say you put a bunch of sticky tabs all over the ball, and turn it a full 360 degrees, everything on that ball relatively is going to be turning through a 360 degree axis, whether it's X, Y, and Z added together axis, as it would be, say, if you're midway between the North Pole and the equator, or whether it's a single axis if you're on the North Pole, or a single axis on the equator.
Okay, so the only way to explain that is that there is no such thing as parallax then. Do you know what I mean? If you're going to use that analogy, then you've got to kind of say, because obviously what you're talking about is, if we are talking about these relative motions of galaxy, sun, galactic center, universe, then those motions have to create parallax. So what, and this is what I'm trying to allude to, is the question you're kind of saying is one of those paradigm questions that alludes to the ball earth model against what we see, and the two will never meet, and they can't meet because they're opposites, because there is no parallax. So what you're suggesting in terms of rotation could never occur in the ball earth model, because it doesn't, as we see. Do you get me, or am I?
Can I add something? If we took the ball earth, what you're, I'm just echoing what you're saying with parallax. If we took the ball earth and we fixed a gyroscope at the equator, we fixed 2 gyroscopes, one at the equator, 3, equator halfway to the North Pole and at the North Pole, and we oriented them with a horizontal axis. Okay, so the axis is not vertical, it's horizontal. And we now...
I've just got to jump in at this point though, Antonio, because people get incredibly confused between axis and rotation. So if I can explain, the rotational axis is the weight turning, and the God, what am I trying to say? I had it a second ago. I've just been blasted. My brain's gone dead.
I think you're trying to demonstrate the when it receives a force that causes precession and when it doesn't, and it's based on the weight, so the axis itself, the spinning.
Well, you've got a spin axis, which is the axle running through the weight. And then you've got a rotor axis, which is the weight spinning. So when people hear people saying, you know, the spin axis is horizontal, that means that the rotor axis is vertical. So it's up, down, the rotor, which is the way that I'd set my experiment up. Just I'm clarifying for the listeners. The spin axis is the axle, and the rotor axis is the weight. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Carry on.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So we have 3 gyroscopes, perfect gyroscope, the ideal gyroscope. Okay, and we spin all of them with the same orientation, with the axis a vertical axis. Okay, sorry, a horizontal axis. And we record a 24-hour period. Now, we imagine that the Earth is not rotating on its own axis. It's simply orbiting the sun. In a 24-hour period, those gyroscopes would show something. Now, because they're on a horizontal plane, they will show very little. Now we repeat the experiment, but this time we have a vertical plane. A horizontal plane. I'm getting jumbled up. So now we have the axis at 90 degrees to what we had it on the first test. And we do the same thing on all 3. They're spinning. And we imagine what those gyroscopes would do on 24 hours of Earth orbit around the sun for a non-rotating Earth. The gyroscopes would have to show a precession, drift. They would have to show drift because they would be oriented in the same position as when they were first fired up 24 hours later, but the relative position between them and where they were pointing in space, I think of it this way. Take a gyroscope to divide the whole universe in two, left and right, or top and bottom, and consider it that way. You have a gyroscope spinning at the equator, 45 degrees north and north pole. And you now move the thing on which they're spinning just to the side. You don't rotate it, you just move it to the side. They're going to show a difference between how they were oriented between those two experiments. So one, when they were on a vertical axis, and second, when they were on a horizontal axis. There's going to be a difference between those two. And there would be absolutely drift. But there isn't.
No.
There isn't drift. And if there was, then that drift would have to be included or summed, what's the word? Added to the Earth's axial rotation. So the gyroscope would turn 90 degrees in 6 hours. Okay. But the Earth is also moving. So it's 90 degrees plus that little fraction of, yeah.
Yep. Plus a day out of 365 days, plus
which
the rotation around the great attractor or whatever the hell they're calling it now, spot in the sky.
Yeah. And the thing is, this should be absolutely child's play. We should learn this at school in physics, and we should learn it by having a bell jar and a really good quality gyroscope spinning and show everybody, look, see how we're rotating on our axis, but we don't.
Well, I totally back your plea about a year ago for every university, library, museum to have a gyroscope in there running, showing us either the Earth is turning or either it's completely stationary, because I know exactly what it would show.
Yeah. And we're talking about these super precision gyroscopes, which are one of the words, one of the terms in which they're described is as an executive toy. And like I said earlier, if you have a toy gun that shoots bullets, like with gunpowder and bullets, then it's not a toy gun, it's a gun. So if a gyroscope does what a gyroscope is supposed to do, it's not a toy gyroscope, it's a gyroscope.
Isn't a Ferrari described as an executive toy?
Yes. So the term
so compared to a Ford Escort.
Yes.
You can almost guarantee that the word executive toy has some sort of tax connotations, that if you buy one, it's going to, you're not going to have to pay some sort of tax on it, or it's not subject to some UN law or some other horse crap along those lines, I can imagine.
I had not thought of that, man, but I bet you're right. You know, recreation.
Yeah, it's legalese, isn't it? It's an executive toy. Ah, excellent. That means that it doesn't have to subscribe to this sort of rule or policy or whatever.
But separate to that, not only do Globebusters have a fiber optic gyroscope, so it's like a ring laser gyroscope, but also I've got a couple of friends in Latvia who have an aircraft gyroscope. So the aircraft gyroscope, it comes with its own motor. It's going to remain spinning. They should be able to hook it up and just record it. It shows the pitch, roll, it shows everything. So they should be able to just record it and show the face of it, displaying the movement of the Earth as it goes round, but it doesn't.
Absolutely. No, there's absolutely no reason why it shouldn't. In fact, a lot of them brag, like the modern AIs in, you know, sort of Boeing 777s from Honeywell, I think it is. I mean, they brag about being able. They're so sensitive they can pick up the turn of the Earth. There's absolutely no reason why they shouldn't. These things are readily available. You can buy them for a few £1,000s. Over to you, Adam.
Yeah, I was just saying because of that fact, all plaudits to Bob, around the Globus, because me and John Antonio have sat with those videos, which are fantastic, the Sagnac experiment, and discussed them at great length, and we've understood them and applied them to our understanding in terms of geocentrism and its disproofs, etc. But the way Bob I thought it was outstanding, the way Bob had used all of that logic and applied the additional stuff in terms of what we have learned recently about electromagnetics to postulate a reason for something that opposes, and this isn't a flat earth excuse, something that opposes the obvious mechanical opposition created by a gyroscope. And I thought that was whether it's true or not, I thought it was absolute genius work by Bob to postulate what he did postulate on Globebusters. Thought it was.
I echo exactly what you're saying. Your sentiments totally, because the way he described it as well was not just by the Malcolm Bowden and the description, and then discussing the fiber optic gyroscopes and the results. But he'd made sure that he explained, so you have the accelerometers and this other thing. So you have the gyroscope itself, and you have these sensitive motion capturing or motion displaying or motion registering elements. Those elements didn't show any rotation. It was this other, the thing that's sensitive enough to measure, say, ether, that measured the ether. The things that are mechanical and too robust to measure ether didn't measure anything. It's like, it's because
I love the distinction you made between the mechanical gyro and the fiber optic and the ring laser gyros. The mechanical gyros are measuring inertia. They're inertial driven, and the fiber optic and the others are so sensitive that they're measuring etheric driven forces. So they're measuring a force, but it sure as hell ain't the spin of the Earth.
And this is
the gyroscope, the mechanical gyroscope would pick that up. Sorry, Antonio, carry on.
Totally. This is the thing. The gyroscope is saying we're not moving, but this other thing saying, well, something's moving.
Something's moving,
that was the point for me. What Bob said was, no, we're not moving. But what this laser light gyroscope is suggesting is that something is interfering with the light pattern. Okay, something is affecting the rate at which this light pattern is moving. That's what it demonstrated. It doesn't demonstrate anything other than that. Whether we want to extrapolate it to the flat Earth, the globe Earth, whatever, what we've demonstrated there is that outside of our expectations, something is interfering in a 24-hour interference pattern on a laser-based gyroscope compared to a mechanical-based. Now, the inference you draw from that, secondly, is, well, we're moving mechanically through space, apparently. Okay, but we're not moving. What then is moving is electromagnetically through space. Now you can make all sorts of, it's the sun, it's the North Pole, it's all these sorts of things. The inference you draw is there is an electromagnetic repeating pattern every 24 hours. That's for me, the scientific inference of what Bob's demonstrated. What people postulate from that point on is theory to me, and work to be done.
Fair enough. It's still showing no movement, though. No actual movement of the contraption.
No,
Well, I think you're right. In a sort of peer-reviewed paper, sort of boundary way, I think you're right. But you can draw inferences from the sun and the moon in terms of the effects on people, on plants, on all sorts of things. I mean, you know, to say that they have some sort of effect on us.
No, what I'm saying is, from that experiment, it's reasonable to make the assumption that the effect we're seeing, if we use a standard mechanical gyroscope next to it and compare it to that, that we could actually, with quite good assurity, state that what we're seeing here is an electromagnetic effect.
Absolutely.
Okay? Not a mechanical effect. And we appreciate that the Earth moves through space mechanically. So
right, got you.
Whatever that effect is, whether it's the sun moving around us that's creating that magnetic effect, electromagnetic effect, that's creating this interference pattern, for want of a better phrase, in the ring gyroscope, that's what that experiment states. You can't draw any more inferences to what it means. What it does mean, as Antonio draw objection to, is, or, you know, it does show it's not rotating. It shows we're not moving in the slightest, but it shows that also something else is interfering with what we see in the skies, because actually we're seeing a measurable effect on what we would call a ring laser gyro, and the effect is so big it affects a ring laser gyro. Now, to then
and pendulums,
suppose,
for that matter,
what effect does that massive electromagnetic force have on what we perceive in the skies, is my supposition I take.
Yeah.
Does that make more sense and less aggressive?
Yeah, totally. You know, I think, okay, I don't believe, I think, and I could be wrong, that in the way that we've been taught to look at the world mechanistically, and the sun is a thing out there in space, and now as flat earthers, the sun is not a thing out there in space, it's something else. But it's still the thing that brings the day and causes warmth and all of. I think we have it backwards. I genuinely do. I think there is an element that we don't understand. There is the thing that causes the sun and everything that goes with the sun. I genuinely do. And I think that at nighttime, this state that during the day causes day, sun, heat, warmth, and light, is saturating. So if you imagine a pie chart, if you will, apportion it however you like, but you have a pie chart and you have two segments. One segment is black and the other is yellow, just for ease of understanding, or blue. Make it blue. The black is saying everything is on, and the yellow or blue is saying there are small elements off. So in the same way that physically we don't move by virtue of our brain sending a signal for us to move. It's the opposite. Our brain is sending us signals to not move all of the time, continuously, other than all the intentions that the brain has for movement, at which point it stops the signal saying don't move. This is what happens with Parkinson's disease. It doesn't do that. It has stopped telling your muscles to not move. So your body, your hands, any motion that you do is your body telling those muscles. It doesn't say, okay, you can fire now. It's saying, okay, I'm not stopping you from firing now. And that's when our hand contracts, whatever the muscle does, okay? That's how we work physically. And yet we think that everything in the universe works the other way around. And it doesn't. It genuinely doesn't. We've been taught that the moon pulls the tides. It doesn't at all. It doesn't do that by any way, shape, or form. And not only that, but nature functions, does its thing totally effortlessly. It doesn't invest energy and force. A tree can force its roots right through the base of a castle, but without any force, without any effort. It just does it like, it does it effortlessly. Now, it looks to me like when we're totally relaxed and think that we're putting no effort, this is when our body is telling all our muscles continuously, don't move, sending an electrical signal continuously to not move. This is nighttime. The earth is saying, don't shine. In the daytime, it's saying, okay, you can stop being told to not do your thing. And we see this with, if anybody has a microwave meter, so there are various different meters you can buy to test microwave radiation or other EMF, sorry. Some of them will have such a wide scope that it will pick up all the wavelengths that come from the sun in terms of heat causing radiation and light. Now, there are others that would pick up white noise. The ones that pick up white noise pick up less white noise in the day than in the night. The white noise it's picking up is radiation. Under the globe, we call it, or they call it, background radiation. And two guys got the Nobel for figuring out by how they were placing a telecommunications radio telescope that way is the center of the universe. That way must have been the Big Bang, because there was a louder hiss when they pointed it that way than the other way. And this was in Australia, by the way. So this extraness at night, we dismiss it because there's light lacking. It's like, dude, if you take electricity and you look at lighting, electrical lighting, when you have all of it together, you have black. You don't have white, you have black. We've been taught, oh no, if you get the three together, you have white. It's like, no. This is limited thinking, because for the black, it's not just the light wavelengths, it's the light wavelengths and everything else. And that's what we have at night. And then we have small vortices in this night sky that have a lack of don't be black sky order. And that's what we have as lights. These would be the places where the various different field lines cross over. And a really good video made by a couple called The Ham, who videoed Venus in the night sky as they flew from the UK to Iceland. And it looks like an angel. It looks like a really cool Art Nouveau angel. And this is Venus, and she's a photographer. She knows how to zoom in manually. She zoomed in on Venus, and it's absolutely stunning.
The one with the long sticky out arms, Antonio.
Yes.
They're kind of like, yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, that's weird. That is.
So this,
I didn't know.
Interesting.
Are you sure that one? I wasn't sure, because I've done some P900 footage shooting. I wasn't sure whether that was effects of the aeroplane window that was creating that streak, because it was so almost cross, you know what I mean? It was quite pronounced, these arms.
I can share the link here. It will take me a minute to find it.
That's fine.
This was happening everywhere, and she made sure to change orientation slightly so people could see that it was coherent. Now, if it was the window, then that's a completely ununderstood effect, because a star or a thing, a light in the night sky, causing this continuous coherent shape in a window glass on a plane. It's like, what effect is going on there?
Oh my goodness, you just gave me chills. When I was about 8, maybe 6, 7, there was this rash across the country in the United States of, I know this is going to get out there for a second, just hold on. Crosses appearing in window glass, not in just churches, but in homes, in bathroom windows, and restrooms, and truck stops. I mean, everywhere in certain areas. And it was just like going across the country in this long street. My father and I went to a place this was happening, 2 different places actually, a church and a restaurant where the bathroom window was doing it. It wasn't every window. It wasn't a consistent thing. It didn't just happen with sunlight. You could actually go on the other side with a lighter and get this effect. It wasn't disbursement rays. It wasn't the normal thing. It changed the shape and then it went away. It all just stopped happening. So maybe that was one of these electromagnetic effects like you're talking about with the sun and the light not doing what it's supposed to do because of whatever's telling it to turn on and turn off. So what's telling it to turn on and turn off? That's what we have to figure out.
I think whatever, bear in mind, by the way, I'm just telling you something that I've been thinking. This isn't.
Well, that's what we do here, man. We sing, we throw it back and forth. I mean, you sparked me on this now, so I'm going to go back and find some of those old stories from the 70s now. My goodness.
Cool. So, what would be sending out the order is really the question, isn't it? What would be what would be in command of this? What would be running this? Am I right?
Right. What's what's the force, the nature of it?
How long did she see the angel for? How much of the flight?
I don't know. Maybe she's left it in a comment, but I've just posted the video. If you want to take a look, I could ask her and come back to you guys another time.
Antonio, the supposition for me, outside of whether it was, assume it isn't an effect of the window, the supposition is that what's happening when this light that's arriving from Venus, is somehow it's mutating into a circular form as it hits the atmosphere. I think from footage I've taken, you can sometimes almost see a crescent on Venus. Mm-hmm. So there appears certainly to be a shape shifting. I won't say it's as clear as the moon's, but there certainly appears to be a loss of form. Actually, I wouldn't say a crescent appearing on it, a loss of form that you get with Venus. And maybe that's so the thing I took from it is that as this light hits the atmosphere, and this image is taken much higher, so there's a lot less atmosphere to look through, what happens is it condenses, a bit like on your standard telescope, in a ball type way. Yeah. So, is that a lesson we can take for all of the celestial objects, that they're all going to, by the time the light hits us through the atmosphere plane, bad atmosphere plane, that it is going to start to turn spherical or round. Spherical is the wrong word, round. You know what I mean? Yeah, by the time we're perceiving it.
It well could be. I don't know if you know Zach, Good Times for All. He's made a video with a couple of lenses between a light, so a light source, a torch, and the moon. He's showing how you can make a smaller shadow than the object casting the shadow. And he has a couple of those lenses. I forget the name of them. The square flat lenses, and without changing the distance of the object, so the torch, he puts two of these lenses together, and the shape that the torch was giving, which was pretty broad, gets narrower. So these are simulating the atmosphere, and it's taken a pretty broad light and made it thinner, narrower. Sorry, so the diameter is narrower. What you're saying is, and what I think too, is the atmosphere has this impact on light, where the more atmosphere it makes its way through, the more it's condensed to a finer and finer point in a coherent way, which means from every angle to the point where it appears to be a ball. Now, the interesting thing about this video with Venus, and it caused me to ponder this for a long time, is that months earlier, I was at the gym and they have these vibro plates. And sometimes if I was waiting for my pals to join me, usually we train in the boxing gym. And sometimes if they were late, I'd do a warm up. And so I wouldn't cool down. I would get on the vibro plate. Now, as I'm on the vibro plate, which is basically plates that vibrate, hence the name, you stand on them, you take a stress posture, and because of the vibration, they course your muscles in order to keep you in that posture to fire on and off continuously, very rapidly. Now, as I'm in this stress posture, I happen to glance at a television set, a display that's displaying whatever, horses or the news, or I forget what it was displaying. But I say, look, this is me. I'm not a robot. As I'm looking at the television, it starts to have these scrolling black and white lines that are scrolling down the monitors. These are not line monitors. These are new television sets. So black and white lines with bunching and distortion between these black and white lines. This continuous scrolling, similar to when they used to make TV shows, where in the TV, they would, in the 70s and 80s, they would capture a TV set within the frame, and you'd have that. Now, there's nothing between that TV set and me to be causing this. There's no, the TV set isn't doing it. All of them were doing it. I mean, I say TV set, it's a huge freaking plasma, you know, or, you know, plasma and liquid crystal, all these various
LED, etc. Right?
Yeah, all of them are doing this. I step off the vibro plate, it goes back to perfectly normal. I go back on, and again, it's having this effect. So I start thinking, what the heck is causing this? It's my motion. The television isn't doing that. It's my motion. It's causing my perception to be interrupted or affected in such a way that it's seeing this. Now, what I think with the footage of Venus is that the act of traveling at 500, 600, 550 miles an hour has an effect on light on Venus. That's what I think. That the act of moving, I think if they landed and she filmed it, it would just be a ball like all the other Venus.
I've noticed this effect. I use a percussion massager on my shoulders. I had a wreck. That's what my disability is all about. So I use a compression massager. That I noticed at first looking at the clock on, because I usually don't even watch TV. I usually never have TV on. I noticed the clock on the display at the bottom of the cable box. This was years ago. And it was doing this weird blinky thing it doesn't normally do. I'm like, okay, what's going on there? And the different vibration, as I would increase and decrease pressure or turn it up and down, it would change the wavy patterns. And these are just simple old red dot matrix lights. Then, like you said, I turned the TV on and my mind was blown. It was like, what is going on? It was almost like some kind of weird psychedelic effect, different. Then I did it. I accidentally touched the back of the neck bone there, and it just increased the patterns change. I could go, it would go up and down. They would go back and forth. So this is all just a whole new field of study for us, my friend. You've just opened us up for new stuff.
I might just butt in for a second there. We've got Paul in chat, and he said he's did a video of an angel as well from a plane. That video is on his channel.
Cool.
And I might just give a shout out to Brett. Brett's an Aussie who I found Flat Earther the other day, and he just sent me a message, DM'd me on Twitter that he's listening in. So g'day, Brett. So no, Paul's got a video there.
Can we pull that up?
Interesting as well, yeah.
Wait, can I give an?
That one's of Sirius too. It's not of Venus, it's of Sirius, and he says it looks like an angel.
Can I? Before you play, are you going to play it?
Yeah, we'll try. It'll take a while to pull it up, mate.
Okay, we'll get it up in a few minutes. Yeah.
I was going to say before you do. I really need the toilet. I had that coffee before.
Shall we go for a break?
Absolutely.
It's time for some gravity.
It would definitely be a good idea. Cool. It's definitely good. Go ahead.
And for everyone in chat, stay around. I know when we usually go for a break, people bugger off and we lose half of our viewers. So just hang around. We'll only be gone 3 or 4 minutes. So just hang around. We'll be back and we'll play Paul's video.
So we're not robots. We do actually have to get stuff out.
No automaton.
We have to take a wizard, don't we, John?
That's
every time.
Well, I'm going to take this whiz.
Go right ahead, my friend. We're working on getting that up.
Remind me to mention the tsunami angels in Japan. There was angels caught there helping people.
Really? My goodness.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
Bye-bye.
Awesome.
Guys, whilst we get gravity cued, uneducated, but just a kind of wild stab in the dark as to what Antonio was describing that. Now, for me, it's a TV, and a TV doesn't give a constant picture. It fires at a frequency, and if you're stood there in a rigid posture, you're also going to generate your own outside of standard frequency. And I think what he's seeing there is an interference pattern between his vibration and the TV's frequency. And it's the vibration of the vibration plate you see in there. So it's quite a high frequency compared to how you could possibly move as a normal person. So he's still on there in a rigid posture. And I think what he's seeing is an interference pattern between that frequency and the frequency that the TV screen refreshes at to change the picture. And that what he's seeing is that interference pattern between him on the vibration plate and the TV screen's refresh rate. But I could be wrong because I'm not.
By the way, I don't think there's Josh here to play Gravity.
I was going to say, I just went to look and see what might be happening with Josh, and he has actually had to step away. I was not even aware of that, so I do apologize to everyone waiting on hearing Gravity. I don't have the ability to share sound. I can pull up the video, but we won't be able to do the sound from my end. Josh is that guy.
I suggest if you need a piss or want a coffee, then go now.
This is the time. Yeah, everybody talk amongst yourselves. But yeah, I think you're right.
Do you need to go to the loo?
I'm good for a moment. I think you're right with the interference patterns too.
If you sing Gravity whilst I nip off, right.
I can pull it up on my phone. I'll play it across my my phone for you guys. How about that? I'll do it that way because I do have the song, as always, here available for me. Let me pull it up. And then, of course, I say that, and my channel is.
You promised.
I know it's coming. It's coming. It's a coming.
Well, I think that was a great first start. Anyway, first half.
Oh, it's been a great show with Antonio. And we say first half, we've gone 2 hours nonstop. We usually have had 2 breaks at this point, so it's been amazing stuff. We appreciate it, my friend.
Yeah, I'm going to bail out in about an hour. I think I'll probably keep quiet from here on in.
I'm good, mate. I've got a late kickoff tomorrow. It's a lunchtime kickoff, so I ain't got an early start. So,
yeah, football. Yeah, I've got to get.
Not for me, for my
shout boy. Out to Good Times for All in the chat. I know he's in there, and
we're doing a hangout tomorrow.
Oh right, cool.
Nice.
I used this video today or all this week actually to bat off ballers on Twitter. So cheers. Good times for all. I've got so many links to videos of really good evidence of flat Earth, and every time I save them when I see them. And almost all of them now are not available anymore. So if anyone wants to talk about YouTube censorship or shadow banning or any of that bullshit that they are doing, then yeah, go for it now.
Are we going to go for it now, or are we going to watch this?
Pretty high, our heads are almost in the clouds, and they're feet are chained to the ground with their chains of misery. They've got a hold of me. They won't let go of me.
Grab a coffee, Antonio.
Let go of me. They might have gravity on their side, but something's pulling us high. Got the potential to fly.
I'm practicing my nuke.
Hold you back from this one incredible chance. They're lucky to have had a glance at you. Are you defy gravity? pretty high. Our heads are almost in the clouds, and their feet are chained to the ground with their chains of misery. They've got a hold of me. They won't let go of me. Let go of me. They might have gravity on their side, but something's pulling us high. Got the potential to fly. Don't let them be what holds you back from this one incredible chance. They're lucky to have had a glance at you. Are you
Unified gravity.
They can be cruel and mean and a huge pain. Our heads are in the clouds now. Don't let them make it rain. A smile can be the sign they're missing out on their rainy day. They might have gravity on their side, but something's pulling us high. Got the potential to fly. Don't let them be what holds you back from this one incredible chance. They're lucky to have had a glance.
I'm with you, Walt.
You
A unified gravity. Unified gravity. Yeah.
I think my ears are bleeding.
Now you big old
say
reach.
we aren't strong enough.
We don't have what it takes.
I say
And I'll show you someday.
they might have gravity on their side.
Make it stop.
You love it, Savage.
You on the red wine again, Adam?
Oh, his brother's there. Of course
Bianco,
he's
baby.
dumb.
Bianco.
Don't let them be what holds you back from this one incredible chance. They're lucky to have
A glance
at you.
at you, a unified gravity.
Unified
Unified gravity.
gravity.
Seriously,
Yeah.
abuse.
Well done, boys. Well done. Another stellar piecework by Uncle Walt as Josh is away. Good stuff, man. Thanks
Hey
for
man,
doing
you gotta
that.
do what you gotta do to make
Hey.
those breaks happen. I hope everybody had a nice little
It's
enjoyment
IRL
there.
media, man.
No, I didn't. That
Hey,
was
that was
shocking
just for you.
Shocking.
Did we
That's
call
us.
out the koalas there, Rush?
Yeah, you woke him up. That bloody chook bloody
Shocking awe, buddy. Shocking awe.
screeching.
Sorry.
Isn't it interesting how what one person can think, wow, that's pretty awesome. So another person is like, that's freaking horrible.
Oh, the song's good. It's just Adam. Terrible.
Hey, are you saying I should go for X Factor next year?
That's it.
Yeah.
I'm upset, guys.
Put
I'm
Simon in his place.
No, I have to say, when I heard the first little bit of a second voice singing along, I thought, hey, is somebody's daughter in there with a really lovely singing voice? And it wasn't, was it?
I heard Walt going and I thought I can't leave
Yeah,
it.
I couldn't help it, man.
thought,
Song
I'm
always
man
makes
in
me
need.
sing.
It's what mates do. I thought I'm coming
I
in.
forgot I had my mic
I
off.
came
That's
in
the only
too.
problem. I used to do that with my mic off.
It was pretty good, I have to say. You know, you make a good backing singer.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. We'll put it
Walt
on
and
the
I
Flat
did-
Earth Band.
Walt and I did a little recording. He has a great app. You should tell Antonio about it. I can't remember the name, but
It's been a while. What was that app? I'll have to find it. Smule, I think. Smule, Smule. Yeah, it's a lovely little karaoke sing along with your friend app. Throw on some headphones and jam away on your favorite tune.
So what's on the docket for hour 2? A little. I mean, I love the technical stuff, and like that is so all you guys. But I also like the fun stuff. And,
we're gonna try and get Paul's video up. Have we got that up?
Lighter side.
That was quite polite of you there, James. Nice one.
Yes. Our technical.
Antonio, can I just ask for those that are listening right now, what's the best way to get in touch with you? You haven't got a website, I take it.
I do.
As far as I know. Oh, do you?
It's up on the screen, John.
It's an artist website, and the messages from it arrive not garbled, but for some reason the sender's email is completely distorted. It's like an auto-generated email. The best way to contact me is email, and it's Antonio Subirats Arts. That's ARTS at yahoo.com. Sorry for the notifications. All of a sudden, they started.
Good.
So Antonio Suberats Arts at
yahoo.com.
Yahoo.
Were you affected by the big Yahoo breach that happened recently?
Not the recent one. I was affected. Should we talk conspiracies?
Hey, we love a good conspiracy.
Oh, here we go.
Here's a conspiracy. At first, I'd like to play Paul's video, to have a look. But I'll tell you the conspiracy, okay? I'll tell you whilst we're watching if you want. Some years ago, there's a company here in the UK called Doctor and Herbs, okay? And these were traditional Chinese medicine shops. And these shops had massage, acupuncture, and advice on various different health, and they would sell you various different pieces of bark and all kinds of weird things, okay, to make into infusions. All of them tasted foul, and they all fixed whatever it is that was wrong with you, okay? Chinese traditional medicine. So
Chinese medicine's hardcore. It's got proper drugs, potent stuff in it. Whatever it, there's a lot of stuff that I come across that I can verify it has very potent stuff in it, mate. It's mad stuff.
Yeah.
Adam is a pharmacist, by the way.
Yes. So here in the West, we usually get a synthesized version of something that's real out there in nature. The Chinese get it by boiling it out of whatever it is that it's contained in, usually. So you'll have bark that will have magnesium and other minerals and a whole bunch of different stuff. Yeah. So there's a guy there. So I go there. I used to do Kung Fu. I'm interested in Chinese culture. And I just see this guy, and I'm there. I forget. I was having an eye condition, and I go in there, and I'm talking. And so anyway, really friendly doctor. Cool. So anytime that I was around going for a coffee or meeting a pal, if I was walking by, I would swing in and say, ni hao, and, have a little chat. And I go in one day, and now I really do not mean this how it's going to sound, okay? If it was a Caucasian person, I would say the same word, okay? I go in there, and he's looking yellow, okay? He's looking stressed and yellow and unwell. And I'm thinking, dude, you're a doctor. You shouldn't be looking so unwell. And with him is, so he's behind the counter. On the other side of the counter, so near me, is this lovely Chinese woman in a red dress and this Caucasian guy. And he's talking quietly with the Chinese woman. And the Chinese woman is talking quietly with the English guy in English. But he's looking really stressed. So I kind of loiter, pretending that I'm just somebody looking at stuff. And eventually they leave. And I say, dude, what's happening? And he says, oh, it's okay. They're friends. They are trying to help me to go back to China. It turns out this doctor was the head of a university teaching hospital in China. Okay? He was the head of the hospital. The company, Doctor and Herbs, is a fraud. It's a slavery company. It's owned by two English guys, okay, who in China have hoodwinked the Chinese government into thinking that they're running a cultural exchange system. They went into his hospital and they spoke to him to see whether they had his permission to approach some of the staff. That's what they did. And so they explained to him cultural exchange, blah, blah, blah. And he said, this is something that I would be interested in. But sure, you can ask my staff. So they go and ask the staff and they come back because he said that he might be interested in this. It would be 18 months away from China, going all around the UK and teaching Chinese traditional medicine. And he ends up working in a shop in Stockport on £11,000 a year, 11,000 a year. If he meets his targets. From those 11,000, he had to pay for room and lodging in a 2-bedroom apartment that was shared with another 6 doctors. Now, all of these people are actually qualified practicing doctors in China, and they end up over here without enough funds and without the means to communicate with China to have funds exchanged because they don't have banks. Okay, so they can't do this. Also, they have this honor thing where to say, hey guys, I'm in trouble, it's just not something that they do, kind of thing, right? So I say to him, okay, dude, so where are you living? He's walking to the shop every day. He's walking 9 miles every day to work and back so he can save the bus fare so he can buy himself a ticket sooner. Okay, so I say to him, well, okay, look, dude, if you can wrangle your board and lodging off the people that are employing you, you can stay with my sister for free. She had a house that was empty at the time, so he could stay there. Okay, so he did. He then goes back to China. It's only maybe 3 months that he's working there. He was still walking to work, but now we're talking half a mile. So he goes back to China. Fascinating guy. He told me all about the mythological origins of acupuncture. Okay, but anyway, goes back to China. Very grateful, very thankful, brilliant. He goes, a couple of weeks later, I get a message from him. Okay, hey Antonio, thank you very much for all of your help. I am wondering if I could ask you I don't think he used the word favor, but if you could do something more for me, something like this. And I reply, yeah, sure. Okay. Then about 2 hours later, I get a response saying, thank you very much for your cordial response. And signed his name, but the other way round. Okay. He was called Dr. Wong. So it's like, what? He didn't write like this. Thank you for your cordial response. Like, what the heck is this? He wrote, hey, Antonio. Okay, because I'd messaged him back and forth. I taught him about informality. Okay. This message arrives. Thank you for your cordial assistance, or I forget what the words were. Like, that's weird. Anyway, I get on with my life, and later that day, I come to the internet and I go to Yahoo, and I've been logged out. So I go to log in. Okay. It's not letting me in. It's not letting me in. It's telling me to go through all these security questions to show that I'm me. Eventually, it tells me the reason we've made you jump through all these hoops is that we noticed your account was accessed from Stockport at this time and from Beijing at this other time, with 45 minutes between the two. Okay. Conspiracy. Who was monitoring?
Right,
Right.
yeah.
It's actually scary. It's scary,
He was
isn't it?
watching you that closely. My goodness.
Yeah. So
Well, I saw you just put up a video that you have now received a YouTube strike on
yeah.
the topic that seems to be the hot button. I almost hate to bring it up and have our show taken down at this point. Oh my goodness, it's so ridiculous. We
Yes.
spent hours on this over the last few weeks on our show we do on TFR on the Ironworks, talking about the madness of Vegas, and the censorship side of it, I believe, is the trick here. I don't think it's a gunplay anymore. I think that's really what this is about.
They wanted to
Censorship.
wipe it. I can speak to that. I got my video wiped because of this stupidity. I hate to say that. I'm again, whenever I speak to these events personally, I'm not mocking anybody. I do believe people die. I'm just saying it's stupidity that I get censored because of an agenda and we get suppressed. So yeah, I'm not discounting the people's deaths or anything like that.
With mine, did you get a strike?
I did get a strike as well. At first I got no notice. They just pulled it down.
Yeah.
And I only found later that it was a copyright, and it was a weird process because I've had a strike before, but this one was just different. It was different.
Yeah.
So,
well, what they did with me first, now I can't prove this. Well, I could screenshot, but I'm not going to because problems. But I didn't say the video that I used is still up now in the channel that uploaded it. Okay. Red Flag Media. Anybody can go and watch it. Okay. All I did was I took that same video. I didn't criticize anybody. I didn't malign anybody. Nothing like that. All I did was take the same video, play it in its entirety, and then simply say, okay, now let's pay attention to be the people inside the arena, the people outside the arena, and the audio from each. That's it. No further. It was a short video. Okay. And then I played the audio with no visuals to distract, just inside arena, outside arena, back and forth. Okay. That's it. Pulled. They pulled it on the grounds of harassment, bullying, and that kind of stuff. On the same day, they pulled they did a strike on Antonio Subirats Strikes Back, which I set up because of the original strike back when, for a video that had been up there for more than a year called Flat Earther Punched in the Face, which I did when a bunch of us were playing jokes with clickbait, okay? And because I'd had an accident and I had a black eye. So, and it was a jokey video where I started off showing my black eye and then say, dude, this was just clickbait. Did you really just hit this thinking you understood? That was all it was, okay? No abuse, nothing like that. So they struck that channel too, because they could see that whenever I get a strike and I'm gagged, I go to this other channel where I'm not gagged. Same day, like virtually the same time. Like boom, boom, both. Like, wow, they are really excessive. I think it's because they did it so badly.
I wonder if they're testing to see how much, how they can suppress us when they do these events.
They will learn something from it for sure. Whatever it is, there's no chance that they're not going to have use the opportunity to see how quickly things communicate, how they communicate.
How big the numbers are, how many people actually know the story. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
God,
what do you think?
Have you looked? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Adam.
Sorry, I was just going to say I've just seen. I think Billy Ray may be joining us soon.
Nice.
And there was one kind of nicely conjoined thing with regards to some of Antonio's work. I kind of wanted to mention the thing that as guys, it's kind of Antonio Suberats and the idiots that criticizing his comments meets Iron Realm. What we've got for you now, Antonio. So in the week you did the stupid Soundly thing.
Yeah,
loved it.
And obviously, you know, we're genuine flat earthers and we obviously watch stuff, but we also read and analyze what's going off and comment. And sadly, take a lot of the comment respectfully and take it on board. But actually, there was one comment that we came across that appeared on face value quite relevant. And that was the guy talking about arc angles.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so and there's a bit of the power of the Iron Realm at play here. We've got the concept of Mr. Savage, and then whilst the guys continued talking, teasing me, I was left to do some of the maths. And the first thing I'd say is, that you received a fair bit of criticism that probably a bit more context is probably in order, actually, before we do that. We're talking about a supposed 700-mile view to be able to see the skyline of New York. And let's assume Trade Tower 1. Probably need more of an American voice or a deep TV. Trade Tower 1.
There you go.
There you go. Now with that, the comment, I'll try and summarize as best I can so that we can probably discuss the more pertinent point, which is the idiocy of comment. This guy suggested or supposed to you that the ocular resolution of the eye is 0.02 degrees. And this gentleman laughed at you because you fool. Actually, when you work it out, the size of this trade tower is 0.02728 degrees, which is a full 0.00728 degrees above the minimal optical resolution of the human eye, which I thought was quite amusing.
Yeah,
in its first sense. And then actually, we as guys sat chatting and musing a little bit, and maybe John, you could probably just allude to the concept, and then I'll bore the arse off people with the maths that proves the concept.
Okay, but before you do, let me just add, a different Globeling came in and said, do you know, echoed the first. He obviously hadn't read the first, because he said, where the first said 0.2759, let's say, the second said 0.2045, a different figure. It's like, okay, if you're working with maths, the distance is fixed. You're talking about 700 miles, the same height of the object. Why two different figures? Which one of you is wrong? And I say this because they're so fixated on being right, and mathematics being so absolutely robust,
and infallible.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So
which of you, and why? Yeah.
So get ready for the sideswipe from Savage, because this is I'm a geek, okay, and I've no shame in that, but we're all sat chatting, and John just came up with this, and sometimes it's not necessarily. It always proves it's not necessarily the maths, because maths can only ever describe what you understand. Maths is useless. Whoa, who's got echo?
Billy Ray, yo.
Hey, what's up, Billy Ray?
You guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you
Yes,
now.
we do, sir. We hear us too.
Everybody. Right. First time I'm doing this on my phone. Never done it before, so might be a little bumpy.
It's coming through totally fine.
Beautiful, beautiful. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Very good to us, Billy Ray. Welcome back.
Yeah, long time since I've been on the Iron Realm. Back to Antonio.
No, welcome, Billy Ray.
Welcome
we want you to
back,
meet
Billy.
Antonio and welcome you back.
Antonio, what's up?
Hey, all good. Good to meet you, man.
Good to meet
Antonio,
you too.
this is Billy Ray Valentine. He hosts the Infinite Fringe on TFR. We met him some time ago. He's been a offshoot member of this mad flat Earth Wu-Tang clan we have going here.
Cool.
I'm the red man of the group. If you're familiar with Wu-Tang at all, not exactly down, but cool with Josh. So
yeah, Josh
would be Method Man. I'll play the red man in this in a flat Earth.
Now we're talking.
Cool. I've no idea where that leaves me and you, John. But
You were going to go into the maths. You were going to break down the Artman.
Let me just let John just please, because you know, fair credit to him. It's like I say, some of the stuff that I always watch you for, Antonio, is about a different perspective. As you can tell, I'm quite focused in when I challenge myself to stuff. You know what I mean? But you're very artistic, and some of the reasons I watch you with some of the map drawing and stuff, which is reasons we should have talked in the past, is that different perspective. And John, do you want to just allude to the concept that the maths will then suppose?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to say welcome to Biily Valentine. Absolutely. Good to have you on board again. But yeah, on the what are we talking about? The maths of the whole thing, right? Angular resolution. So when we're talking about angular resolution and seeing things that should be visible to our eye, like you said earlier, it was 0.02 degrees. Okay, so generally we apply that to the height of an object, being, you know, of that angular resolution to our eye. But what it also struck me is that it also applies to would be width of that object. So if you had a skyscraper that was made of matchsticks, one on top of the other, then it really doesn't matter how high that skyscraper is. At a certain distance away from it, the angular resolution of it on a width basis is going to be invisible. It doesn't really matter if it's 100 miles high or 50 miles high. It's going to be invisible if it's not wide enough. And from what I worked out, I mean, there's pretty rough estimates. Made a comment on your video saying stands to reason that angular resolution works on both the horizontal and the vertical. If you had a matchstick wide skyscraper, then it wouldn't be too long before distance would create an unresolvable angle, no matter what the height of the structure would be. And from my sort of rough calculations, if the tower was 100 meters wide, and as far as I know, I think it's about 60 meters wide.
No, I've got the full maths, John.
You've got the specs on the building. Okay, well, let's just say the tower is 100 meters wide, then it would be literally resolved invisible by 178 miles away. Due to the angular resolution being more than 0.02. Carry on, Adam. Go for it.
Well, I'll add to that then, John, you're right. So the dimensions of the World Trade Tower 1 is 200 foot square and 1,776 foot wide. So what I did there was, as John said earlier, let's assume that if we're working with angular resolution, then the perspective ratio decreases both in width and height by the same ratio. So I took the ratio of the width and height and then applied that to the calculations, and I won't bore people too much with the maths, to the arc tangent calculations that were quoted to you, Antonio. And the maths is there, and I'll post the picture that I shared with the guys while they ignored me while I did it. And as we said earlier, the angular resolution of the eye is 0.0, or as we were told in comments, it is. And as the gentleman kindly pointed out, the height would resolve to an optical resolution of 0.02728 degrees, which we should have all have been able to spot from 700 miles, which, you know, like we said, was stupid. But actually, when you calculate what this does to the width, the actual arctangent of the width of the building becomes 0.0030720721. Okay, so actually a tenfold less almost.
Yeah.
In terms of so
you should be
impossible
able
to see.
Yeah, you should be able to see its height, but not its width.
So it becomes invisible because it doesn't even become a line. It disappears from being just a straight line, no matter how high the tower is.
Yeah. So, I mean, the whole thing, intuitively, you can see there's no chance. Okay, that's just intuitively. When you go down into the mathematics, you go, okay, which of these mathematics, where are they favoring something and avoiding something else? And you nailed it on the head. They're avoiding the horizontal dimension. You know, they're just avoiding to mention that. Because if they mention that, in fact, if they combine the two, it would be too small. You know, so they don't mention that. They talk about the height. It's a level of absurdity, or it's like a desperate attempt to cling. Because what he's saying is we should be able to see it from Bermuda. It's like, no, we shouldn't. We don't, and we shouldn't. And it's not that we don't because we're on a ball. We don't because it's too far away and too small for our eyes to see.
Oh, it's almost absurd. It's almost absurd, isn't it, that we have to explain this to people? But unfortunately, we are in the position where we have to explain this to people.
As we did say in all of this mathematics, it did not account for any form of refraction. It did not account, right, for the amount of atoms over 700 miles and the effect of dense above sea level atmosphere that would have as an effect. And that also reflects on some of the comments in terms of 700 miles at sea level and the amount of atmosphere, and traveling to the moon and the amount of atoms difference between the two distances is astronomical. And again, kind of showed ignorance of the quality of comment, mate, that probably isn't worth referring to, but we thought it was good fun because it instigated a good bit of chat for us this week.
But that was really good, because the next time that I'm discussing angular resolution with anyone who's talking about it, and I say, okay, can you now give me the horizontal resolution? Then just see what they do, you know, because it's always going to, we're never talking about something that's wider than it is tall when we're talking about distance. So it's like, okay, now work out the width, how much of the width will be resolved to us. So that's cool. That's really cool. I have from time to time, because I've had this kind of thing before, not in the same way, but we can say to them, look, dude, let me explain something to you. Sometimes you might go to a lake and see the other side of the lake. And then the next day you go to the lake and you don't see the other lake. Whoa, you need to mute.
Hello?
Hello, you need to mute.
Hello?
Hello?
Unfortunately, I'm unable to... Hello?
Right, let's just go back to Josh. Josh, what's going on?
I'm unable to hear you, but if you can hear me, please give us a call back. 1773-270-2818. Thank you and have a great day. Bye for now.
Wow. That's a first.
Oh, this is going to be fun.
That is a first. Sorry, Anthony, carry on with your lake analogy, because that's awesome.
I want to see what insurance this woman's selling. Okay, so you say to them, okay, dude, look, you know that sometimes you might go to a lake and see the other side of the lake, and then go back the next day and not see the other side of the lake. It doesn't mean that on the second day there's more curvature and that's why you're not seeing it. All that it means is that the atmospheric conditions are making it not available for you to see. Exactly. And it comes down to the point where we really are condescending to them. We have to.
Oh
my God, this is hilarious.
Hey, why don't you just tell him about the flat Earth? He clearly wants to hear something.
Good day.
Let's put him on.
Have a good day yourself. Do you want to
Before-
talk about flat Earth?
No. Before I'd just like to say I've not had an accident in the past 3 years.
Hey,
You're not feeling suicidal.
No, I feel
In
no
case of an
negligence.
accident, your benefits triple.
Yeah, here in the UK, I don't know if you had the same in the US. We had people dressed like solicitors with clipboards, stopping. Basically, they were fishing for customers, stopping people in the street, saying, "Hey, have you had an accident lately?" Okay, and you could spot them a mile because of how they were dressed. And I really wanted that. They disappeared just when I concluded that this is what I was going to do the next time. They stopped being available. Okay, they just stopped being around. What I wanted to do.
Only fools and horses.
Wait. What I wanted to do when the next time that somebody said, "Excuse me, sir," I was going to go, "Yes," and trip up and fall.
How may I help you?
I don't know.
Yes, I'd like to get the flat Earth package, please.
Yes, yeah, I want one of those too.
Yeah, I'm interested in the flat Earth package. I heard you guys have a great special on that. Can you just go over the details, sir?
Hello?
Please. Are you there, sir? Yes. Hi, I'm very interested in the special. I actually called you. So I'm wondering, can you go over the plan with us? Yes, it's me, sir. Yes, I am here.
Wow, I have no idea what's going on.
For customer service, you do have a great day. Bye for now.
Oh, thank you.
He'll call back in about 2 minutes. It'll be half price in about 2 minutes. Don't worry about it. He'll call back.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe now's the time to stop allowing a subject that warrants them jumping in. Allow Billy Ray to be introduced. Maybe let's go off topic. Let's have an introduction to Billy Ray so they've got no interest with the stuff that's obviously disturbing them to feel the need to get downtown Delhi to call me.
Hovering over the target, you remember we spoke about?
Yeah, that's it. I love it. Don't you love a pat on the back, though, guys? Don't you love it? I love it. I love
Over to you, Billy Ray. How you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's new over there?
Ain't nothing new over here, man. Everything is cool. I'm glad to be on with all you guys. Awesome. That was pretty eventful. Next time people come in, we should make that a part of the show, right? Every time people come in, we just sell them on the flat Earth. Hey, did you know the Earth was flat? You didn't? Well, you're at the right place. I mean, just real quick on the conversation you guys were just having. And I can definitely see how to you guys, because I'm a different perspective from you guys. I am not as versed. I'm not as up on this stuff as you guys are. So I can see how you guys would get like, do I really have to explain this to you? But we have hundreds and hundreds of years of indoctrination, behind us, probably genetic memory that tells us that it's been hammered into us that the Earth is a globe. It's just the way it is. So a lot of this stuff is new to the majority of people. You guys are having next level conversations right now. So, and that's awesome. It needs to be had and it needs to be done. So I'm glad you guys are doing it. But sometimes, you have to look at us and just be like, hey, let's put them on. Let's let them know what's going on. We can ease them in, take it as
Billy Ray.
Yeah.
Do you all right, bro? How you doing, mate? It's good to speak
What's up,
to you.
buddy? Good to speak to you too, bro.
Yeah. Do you get the concept of what we were saying, that actually all the ballers have been talking about when they talk about as things go into the distance is that they dissipate in height? Okay, what we're suggesting is if you're going to measure an object, it would also dissipate by the same ratio in its width, to the point that actually width is a much more significant measure of visibility than height.
Yeah, what I'm saying is dumb it down. Like, I mean, it's
I'm sorry.
Take a toothpick or a pine needle, Billy Ray. Take a toothpick or a pine needle and have your buddy walk across the room or down the hall with it and see how long it takes till you can no longer resolve that toothpick or that pine needle and see it. That's what we're saying about a building that would be 700 miles away. Not only would the heights make it impossible for us to see it on a flat plane,
Great
but
time.
the small width would make it lose resolution far before the height would. We would not be able to see it just because it was so skinny.
Yeah, brilliant.
I'm trying to be as simple as I can.
No,
Yeah.
I get
But
it.
I'm
No,
with you.
not-
I'm with
not
you,
saying-
Billy, as well.
Nailed
You got to make. I came up with an idea last night to make a video directly for children around about 10 years old.
Yes, that's exactly what we need.
That's exactly what I thought we needed as well. And I started on the timesheet last night, and yeah, I've done about 30 seconds of it, and that's exactly what we need. I mean, it's not whether, you know, it needs to be put into such simple language that it's comprehensible by anyone.
And I'm not necessarily saying dumb it down for me. I'm saying
No,
dumb it down
for me too.
That's right, for everyone. I was just using your name. That's all. I know you're on top of this, brother.
I know, Walt. Hey, listen, man. If I'm gonna be insulted by somebody, it may as well be you. I'm all cool.
Hey, that's it.
100% cool with that.
The man rapture coming at you.
Can I tell you what I do? Okay.
Yes, sir.
This is for myself. I look at something. Okay, like what John was just saying. It's the arc tang. Okay, it's like I don't even know what that button looks like on a calculator. Okay, I genuinely don't.
It's the inverse tangent.
Okay, but still,
so it's 1 over to the tangent.
Okay, so on the calculator, I don't know what buttons you press, but I understand the principle. Okay,
tan to the -1.
So, okay, still, what buttons do I press? So
that's the one that's on the calculator. You wanted to know which button it was. That is tan to the power of -1 on the calculator.
Leave it, Adam.
Well, okay, cool. I'll look back for it now. But what I do is I translate it into what you just said, a pine needle or even a pen. You know, a pen, and have your friend just move away to the point that you can't see it. You know, so that's what I do for myself. I boil it down to really simple terms so that I can see it, you know, so that I can genuinely visualize it, whatever it is that I'm considering. So I have done a couple of videos that are simple because the principles are simple, like centrifugal motion and the oceans on a spinning globe. I just had a bowl, I had some colored water, and I spun the bowl. I didn't even spin it very fast. And this is another thing, which is much more difficult to explain. The ratio of something big spinning at, you know, 1 rotation per 24 hours, when you scale it down, the spin has to increase. You can't keep it to a ball the size of a, say, basketball, rotating once a day, because that doesn't reflect the same thing at all. Okay, so you have to, the smaller you go, the faster you have to make the comparison. So I have a bowl of water, this blue water, glass bowl, and I spin it, and you can see that the water rides up the bowl because it's being pushed outwards. Just to say, look, dude, if the Earth was spinning, this would be happening to the water. Now, there's no barrier to the water, so it would be bulging around the equator. But it doesn't bulge around the equator. It doesn't bulge anywhere. So that kind of simple visual, and that's how I translate things for myself.
I find your sort of experiments. Sorry, mate. Let me just get this in here before I forget it.
Sorry.
No, but I sort of compare what you do, Anthony, to Foucault World, Nick. Is it Nick? I think you've spoken to him. Yeah, it's really, you know, it's just simple stuff that everyone can do on a day-to-day basis. It's empirical. It's based on the senses. It's just irrefutable, which is why it drives people so mad. You know, when Foucault World, Nick, photographed those or zoomed in on those lighter on the other side of a playground that is perfectly architecturally level, you know, and he showed the mirror band, and he showed that the bottom of the lighter was disappearing. I mean, that's just irrefutable evidence. It's just, you can't get over that, which is probably why you've been receiving so much flack as much as Nick has. Well,
Yeah.
again, yeah.
Yeah, and I will say... Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, I was going to touch on a point that Billy Ray said about a couple of minutes ago with us being indoctrinated for the last few hundred years. There was an article that come out. Oh, sorry, an article. Someone posted a article from 100 years ago about a teacher. I think he was a teacher, and he was trying to teach the globe, and he was ridiculed in this paper for trying to teach the globe Earth. That was only 100 years ago. Whether the article's true or not, we have to go back to that sort of thing. But it looked quite genuine. So my question is, how long have we actually been indoctrinated for? How long is the majority of the people believed in a globe compared to a flat Earth?
Well,
Rob, can I, guys, I've got to be in my bonnet, please. Just give me, because it's just to go back to Billy Ray's point, and there is a reason for the level of depth of this, mate, and that's because when I sit here as me, and there are plenty of other geeks like me that sit here, and when they skim read Antonio's quality product in terms of stuff, they read this bullshit that I just went through properly. Yeah, when they read about, arctangent, Antonio didn't understand arctangents, right? And whatever it means and how it would calculate it and this stuff, right? So it's hard for him to respond to it. But here, with the guys at the realm, with us all working together, we come across stuff like this and we take it apart to the nth degree, and we prove, actually, once again, that whilst these trolls are out there with their little silly bits of, we can quote, hey up, Delhi's back. Whilst they quote stuff that to the layman may appear to disprove stuff, we're happy to take that challenge on scientifically, mathematically, or however they want to do so, and show them that actually you're just trolling, mate. You're talking shit.
Yes. Now, just to clarify.
What's in the stars for you today? Want insight into love, career, family, the future? Our 1-800-Astrology line connects you to experienced clairvoyant astrologers.
Para continuar en español, marque el 3.
Interesting. So,
if you're a first-time caller and want to purchase a psychic reading at the customer service calls may be monitored for quality assurance and training.
Yeah, there you go. So, he's on mute. That's Tim Osman, by the way. You can just continuously mute him. You'll have to continuously mute him.
He's killing him, isn't he? He's killing him.
I do understand. Listen, just to make it absolutely clear. Okay.
Service is for entertainment.
Can we mute him, Josh?
No, Antonio, I've got a serious question actually now.
Okay, but before you do,
before Tim comes in, do you think when he's doing this, do you think he masturbates as well?
maybe spiritually.
He's just dropped out. He ran away. He was in, mate, and he just ran away.
Maybe spiritually he's masturbating. So I do understand angular resolution. What I was saying was I don't know how you do the calculation for it, but I do understand how things shrink in size from the various different dimensions. I never would have thought of only shrinking one dimension and not the others, So I do understand the principle. And it's by understanding the principle, I don't mean I understand it vaguely. It's like, no. I understand it distinctly and clearly. Just the mathematical, which buttons you press to calculate it. That, because I'm more right-brained, and I know that if I start paying attention to those, I lose.
The point I implied there was it's easy for me to look at that and go, oh, there's a little coffee time break, bit of maths for me to have. Yeah. For a lot of other people, it's not. And actually, they may perceive that with the way it's written as fact. And now what I'm saying is, it's not fact, it's a misrepresentation of the mathematics, is what I'm saying.
And I think it's freaking cool when you guys come in and start responding. I think, yes, yes, it's brilliant. I do. I think it's brilliant. You know, I watch and I go, ha! You can just
Thanks. Look, let's get on. Let's get on to Billy Ray before Tim finishes and gets another box of Kleenex. So.
Well, what's going on, guys? Why are we talking about Tim Osmond?
Because it was in here trolling.
Oh man, Tim Osmond he's a good dude. Listen, no, he's not. But anyway, I just wanted to congratulate you guys on the Iron Works. Also, very cool that you guys are doing that. Very happy about that, man. And everything you guys are doing, you guys got tons of people watching right now, which is very cool. You guys are doing your thing. Very happy to be a part of this on Friday the 13th.
No kidding.
All day.
Yeah. All days.
Which was that? Sorry about that.
No, I was just gonna say of all days, Friday the 13th. It's great stuff.
Friday the 13th, man. I'm gonna sit and watch a bunch of scary movies later on tonight. It's gonna be awesome.
Some good Jason Voorhees.
So here's the thing I wanted to ask all of you. What do you do? So, when you're looking at something complicated and abstract, okay, that it's not just an easily solved problem, okay, you need to consolidate. So, when it's just like you're exhausting your capacity to continuously consider an option, a possibility, whatever it is, something abstract, which so much of this is. What do you do for a respite? I'll tell you what I do, but I'd like to hear what you guys do for a respite so that the ideas can consolidate. And they so often do. You get away from it, you do something else, and then it's like, boom, oh, this is how it works. Oh, this is what's happening.
You've not got children, have you?
Yes, I do. I have two.
Right, running around the house.
No. They live with they stay with me every other weekends, and they're with me off kind of throughout the week, sporadically. Well, fixed, but also sporadically. They might say, "Hey, Dad, can you do this?" But yeah, they live 5 minutes away from me.
I was being sarcastic, not.
Okay. Yes.
I'm not the CSA, mate. I was being. What I mean is, I have plenty of breaks in between ponderous thoughts. Do you know what I mean? It's ponderous thoughts are a break from things.
Right. Yes, I was there. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing broke down, but I was there where it's like going to work was like, why am I actually feeling relief? And then I'm going, yeah, I've got you. But what about you guys? What do you do for a respite, for a break from complex thoughts?
Cannabis. As much cannabis as I can ingest.
Yeah, that'll work. In fact, I think that's one of the reasons that it's so frowned upon by... Oh, Catalonia. In Catalonia, they just recently, before all this kicked off, they legalized cannabis clubs. Totally legalized cannabis clubs where people could go and ingest and smoke and swap and whatever cannabis.
Nice.
But
maybe
you had to be a resident of Catalonia. You couldn't be from outside Catalonia or outside of Spain. So they didn't want drugs tourism, This is something that Catalonia did on its own with the remit of its autonomous powers. So this is one of the things that is different about Catalonia and the rest of Spain. Sorry, guys, it's just something we're talking about.
Well, Antonio, whilst we're on that subject, so for Billy Ray and the other guys in Northern America, you three boys, yeah, a serious question. We've been watching the false flags go off over there. Okay, and we're all interested in it, whatever that interest in terms of belief is. There's been a lot of definitively real stuff that's gone off, and significantly involving a shed load more of people over here in Europe, which is no false flag, a real flag. Okay, and actually a real significant event. And I just wondered how it's being reported over there. And then from that, maybe we could lead on to what the frig is going off. Basically we've got a situation where even under EU law, if a European state attacks its own citizens, it should be excluded from the Union, or at least suspended. We have no response by the bureaucratic banking state because it's not financially an option. Although probably getting rid of Spain might be a good idea, to be honest with you, in terms of finances. But that's a separate issue. But do you know? Probably, yeah, it'd help the balance books, wouldn't it? Do you know what I mean? But outside of that, what have the guys in America seen, heard? What do they think? And actually, stuff your little shooting. There's actually a state attacking its citizens over here that's just being ignored, while you guys have an orchestrated.
And that's most probably why we have that orchestrated thing going on right now.
Yes.
It would be my best guess, is to distract us from real occurrences just like this. I mean, when a democratic, I see a lot of people, like, I know a little bit because I've informed myself on it, but no, it is not in the MSM here in the state. So why don't someone more informed about it give everybody a rundown, our listeners who may not even know this is going on, that people are being denied their rights, not only here in America, but in other places.
So in Spain, you've got Spain in the in regards to the European Union is classed as a state of states. So a state comprising states. Okay, this was written by the half-wit Franco. So not very didn't have a very good vocabulary. Okay, and he was trying to copy the American model. Okay, so each region, similar to the United States, it has a certain element of autonomy. So it can levy taxes differently. It can do various different things that is not imposed on other regions. Okay, but overall, you have the federal government, like in the US, that controls all of it altogether. So that's what we have in Spain. But in Spain, you have taxes that are levied by the federal states on the various different regions, and you have the taxes that are levied on this one part, which is called Catalonia, which is the northeastern coast of Spain, bordering the Pyrenees and France, and actually striding the Pyrenees into France. So half of Catalonia is in France. So Perpignan and Champagne and these regions, okay? So this portion of Spain is very productive. It has a different mentality. We do have a different mentality. We are the guys who build cast towers out of humans and walk them around the streets in festivals. I don't know if you've ever seen the Caseriers, okay? So what we're seeing now is this is what happened when people went to vote in local elections in a referendum which was asking, should we leave Spain or stay with Spain? The state of Spain said, if you go ahead with this vote, we will not consider it legal. And Catalonia went ahead with it anyway. And just before going ahead with it, the Spanish government said, we will not allow you to go ahead with it. So this is what happened in some of the polling stations. They physically stopped people from going in to vote. That's what they did. They literally stopped people from voting. Now,
is that in the democratic state of Spain?
Yes.
Yes.
So
okay.
These people,
carry on, sorry.
Yeah, and as you see, they didn't do it kindly. They didn't just simply arrive there before anybody else and lock the doors and stand in front of the doors. No, they wanted to show their might, their macho, yeah? So they grabbed old men and women and pulled them by the hair, okay? Now, they're doing this so that the Catalans will respond with violence, so that they can then impose a military system. That's why they're doing this. And we Catalans know this. So we are bound to not respond with violence. Now,
you know what, Antonio, mate?
Yeah.
Right. Of all the, I always write a few notes and points, and that is that from that day, look at it. From that day, the Catalans have already won, mate.
Yes.
Look at what is going off. I've been in stuff. Look at them. One of the things that kind of welded tear was the Catalan firefighters marching in front of the people as they faced their death squads. And it's probably important to state these police, Antonio, weren't local Catalonian death squad Nazi officers with black armor. They were sent from different parts of Spain to police this event, weren't they?
Yes. So these were brought in from other regions.
Disassociate themselves from the humanity of it.
Yes, they don't want friends and relatives and neighbors to see them. So that's why this is why in the United States they were bringing in foreign troops when they were wanting to bring the police state and various different things. That's what they do. So Catalonia provides the biggest portion in the United States. The biggest portion of tax comes from California, does it not? For the federal coffers.
I'm not sure about that. I know they got one of the greatest GDPs, I think, in the world. California does.
Yeah. So I think that California's portion of tax compared with, say, Kansas or Nebraska would be larger. So it's the same in Spain. Catalonia has this huge tax burden, and the taxes it pays are specifically used in poorer regions. They're supposed to be, the Catalans have been trying to demand that they be spent on infrastructure, and this is for the past 40 years.
Antonio, sorry to interrupt. Can we just say that what we're seeing now is actually squads of teams, people coming and actually stealing the votes that have been cast?
Yes.
There's in Spain, the Democratic, within the European Union, and there are Spanish government squads coming in and stealing the pre-cast votes by legitimate votes by people.
Yes.
Is anybody else suffering a dialing attack right now, or is it just?
That's John trying to get back in.
Yeah, I'm trying to bring him
got
back.
Kicked out.
So you see that. So Catalonia pays a huge portion of taxes. Yeah, no. It's good that you pointed it out. Catalonia pays. This is at a school, by the way. So Catalonia pays a huge portion of taxes that's supposed to go to other regions or the poorer regions. Okay. The Catalans have been imposing, the government changed the laws so that those taxes that go to all these other regions be spent on infrastructure so that those other regions can make their own money, develop their own industry, and stop relying on Catalonia. Instead, a huge portion of these taxes that is given to other regions is given to other regions so they can have festivals. Like, genuinely, they have week and 2 week long festivals where food is free, where the streets are decorated, where incredibly expensive dresses are paid for, musical bands, all kinds of stuff. None of it is infrastructure, and none of it is for tourists. So it's not like it's even, it's going to bring tourists in. No. It's spent for those reasons, for those regions, and the reasons that are given is that it's for their morale, because otherwise they wouldn't have the happiness that they used to, and they wouldn't be disposed to work. That's part of the reason that's given to it. So the Catalans have said, no, enough of this. You've caused a huge financial problem in Spain. So the Spanish banks have caused a huge, like everybody else who suffered from 2008. The amount of political corruption is incredible in Spain, to the point where the mayor of Marbella was sent to prison for embezzlement. His wife was stopped by the police randomly at night because they saw this very flash police car, this very flash luxury vehicle being driven around by a single woman in the middle of nowhere. So they pulled her over to, what's going on. And they have the right to search a vehicle. It's not like in the US, okay? They have the right to search a vehicle. So they realized who she was. They recognized her. They looked in the boot, and she had literally bin liners full of euros. They had bags full of money in the boot of this car, okay? So These are incredibly corrupt politicians outside of Catalonia. The Catalans were highlighting this, pointing this out, writing comics about them, laughing at this, okay, and then also bitter that that money was partly theirs.
Can I add a bit again there, Antonio, in terms
Sure.
of this is obviously, you know, these bags of money, etc., etc., and there's probably a need to add a level of significance to where the source of that sort of money come from. This isn't Spain, America. Spain is a big, like many European countries, it's a big amalgamation of many different regions that used to exist medievally. Just
Like
as you
Yugoslavia. Think of Yugoslavia.
Just as you see Britain arguing with Brexit now and the Scottish need for independence, we are all very, very regionalised in our, because Europe's quite a big place. Do you know what I mean? So once Catalonia develops this level of independence, there's a lot of stuff that's gone off in the north of Spain, similar to probably what you guys would understand in terms of the IRA with the Basque separatists.
Yes.
And once the floodgates open with this then opens for division all across the many different regions of Spain, which are a lot more militant than what you're seeing here. And it then leads to the full, like I said, even though I jokingly said earlier, in terms of the finances of Europe spreadsheets, it does lead to the full collapse of Europe. And you can see why there are bags of money around, because there is a need to stop this and make the world only believe it's just a small local disturbance by a load of yokels wanting to have their own voting rights on their little bit of land.
You've got to ask Adam what those police are thinking. You know, they're human beings. So what are they thinking doing this to these people? Are they?
Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, with any war, you have the dehumanization of the enemy. Okay, so forever the Catalans have been painted as Jews. This is back from before the days of Franco. Okay, the Catalans are painted as Jews, as having the same mentality, all the negative qualities that are attributed to Jews from the fascist mind. Okay, that's how the Catalans are considered outside of Catalonia. Now, outside of Catalonia, they control the news, so they don't know that inside Catalonia you have a separate tax.
Or recorded.
Oh, fuck off, Tim. So outside of Catalonia, you have a tax.
Come on, Tim. Yeah, give me more, Tim, baby. Finish it off, Tim.
Go and get some Kleenex.
Be close if you're popping back in.
You're
there, Tim.
Kleenex.
Come on, Tim. Finish it. Finish it, Tim.
So
unfortunately, I cannot hear you.
And give it a wide.
If you can hear me, please call back.
Tim, wide.
Within 5 seconds.
Goodbye.
Go back home.
Goodbye. So,
there we go. Bye, Tim.
So in Spain, outside of Catalonia, they don't even know that inside Catalonia, they have a separate tax that everybody who's employed pays, and that tax is exclusively for people outside of Catalonia. They don't know this. The media doesn't tell them. So when they see the Catalans complaining, they don't tell them that the Catalans want their money that is dedicated to these poorer regions to be spent on infrastructure. They don't tell them that. They simply say, look at the Jew Catalans wanting to not share the wealth that comes to Spain, and they take over it over in Catalonia. It's like, dude, the reason the Japanese and the American companies are in Catalonia is because they have a history of being good workers. That's why. That's why they're not in the South, because the South does not have a reputation of being good workers, whether it's fair or not. Okay. Also, the South was completely killed. The South was mainly mining. There are huge resources in the South, and they're mining resources. And this was closed down so that there would be revolt and discontentment and foment the civil war. So it's a complex situation. But the point is, the Catalans have been mistreated first. Only 40 years ago, every Friday night, the Spanish police the Spanish military will walk around the streets of Barcelona, round up 50 males, and shoot them on the Saturday morning in public. Only 40 years ago, okay? Sorry, no, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. They would round up Catalans and shoot them publicly, okay? Whilst the Civil War was going on. So yeah, no, anachronism, 1920s and 30s. They would round up Spanish and shoot them publicly, Catalans, and shoot them publicly, okay, to demoralize the Catalan fighters who were fighting against the fascist state. They did this every Friday whilst the war went on, okay. Eventually the war was lost, and the guys who won the war, which were the fascists, then imposed that the language be made illegal, that the Catalan festivities be made illegal, traditions be made illegal, writings, sculpt, all kinds of Catalan things were destroyed and made illegal. That's the beginning of the Catalan state in Spain that we're seeing now. So these people, for all of this time, have been living under the mandate of the guys who murdered their grandfathers. And now they're like, do you know what? We've had enough patience. We've urged you to build up the rest of the country so we can all benefit. And it's enough. You've screwed us over with the banks. You've screwed everything over. Now you're saying that we are going to bail you out, that we are going to return the money to the European Union that did not come to us, but went to these other regions. Fuck off. And that's what they're doing. And whenever, yeah, and whenever these rumors start of independence, they started in Yugoslavia too. Okay, whenever they started in what used to be Czechoslovakia, whenever these rumors start, they end up in separatism. They end up in different countries, in volcanization, well, in the splitting of volcanized nations, okay? And this is what's happening. And in the next few years, the Catalans are very crafty and intelligent people. Whilst they were highlighting the corruption of the Spanish politicians started smear campaigns against them. So the Catalans said, take us to court and show your evidence. That's what they did, okay? The Catalan politicians. So what the opposing politicians did was say, well, we haven't got any because you're crafty like Jews. It's like, yeah, because they're not freaking corrupt, that's why. But the point is, whilst the Catalans have been starting the legal process for secession, for being its own independent nation, they have been going around capital cities around the world buying diplomatic buildings to set up Catalan embassies. They've got them ready to go. So this vote was really just a formality to show the rest of Spain and show the rest of Europe that Catalonia is going to be its own independent state like Switzerland. And I say, good on you. Oh, the United Nations, sorry, the European Union said, we will not moderate or mediate any meetings between the Catalans and the Spanish. The United Nations said, we're not doing this either. The Swiss said, we'll do it. So
for a fee.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's, guys, can I come back to the Americans? Because the point I really, you know what I mean, Antonio summarized it. I think, if I'm being honest, dude, little bit Catalonian bias. And
yeah, slightly.
Little crept in there at some point, not necessarily relevant to the point we're making, but I think I sniffed a little bit, dude. I think I did. Those dirty Northerners, eh? Those dirty Northerners. You're in Manchester. What are you on about? You're in Manchester, dirty Northerners. I heard you.
Yeah.
Guys in America, what have you heard of this? Do you realise the significance of this? It's certainly been downplayed in the UK. You know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've seen them tearing ballot boxes out of hands of voters. I mean, that's enough to make anybody's blood boil.
But I bet you've seen that on YouTube.
Oh, indeed. Oh, yeah. Well, I don't watch mainstream news, so I don't know what's being shown and what's not. So I couldn't even tell you there.
Yeah. Everybody else has been distracted with this audio effects, possible thing that happened in the place that we can't mention because we might get a strike.
That's the one.
Yes. Yes. The yep.
And the story changes like it did with the infamous 9/11, and like it did in Spain, in the UK. Sorry, with let's not forget, in the summer in August they had a hoax shooting in Barcelona. I was there in Spain. I was in the south, and I watched on the television news as the person that was being shot by the police was running down, being shot at, eventually collapses. And whilst the newscaster is reading and expressing how difficult it was to kill him, the guy that's just been shot is still in shot and sits up, goes like this with his arms, and then stands up and goes back to his marks on live TV. Like this was shown on live TV. So
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's like, come on, you know. Also, there's a guy, Oliver Ibanez, who's well, he lives in Catalonia, a Spanish flat earther in Catalonia who was right there and said, no, dude, the next day everybody's fine and dandy, just like it was a drill. Yeah. But the story with the place that we can't mention has changed. Like, originally it was one thing, then it became a different thing, then a different thing, then a different thing. This happened with 9/11, all these different things. It's like, yeah.
I'll tell you what I saw in this place today that you can't mention was these people. And there was one scene where there was a set of sequences with like somebody starting music. So this guy then started shooting from somewhere, or you certainly heard shots from somewhere, and then people started panicking. And then there was this other place which was a little bit further away, but not too far away to be able to hear the music and the gunshots. But they had a place where before the music, or just as the music started, running. So they must have been scared by music, right? Whereas these other people that were nearer to it weren't scared by the music. They were only scared by the gunshots after the music started. But the people further away, they were running. They must have been really scared. I mean, it's country music, and I understand that.
Dude,
you couldn't be scared by
aggressive song, man. It was an aggressive song.
It's depressing shit as far as I know. Their country music. My girlfriend left me.
Oh, come on! The Eagles is Western, country and Western.
Can I say? I just want to butt in.
No.
I just want to butt in and say, one of Antonio's favorite artists, country music artist, is also one of my favorite country music artists. We recently lost him, the late great Don Williams.
Oh, dude, I saw him live here.
I would have loved to seen him live.
That was my mum's favorite too, as well, Josh.
Really?
Absolutely, like a masterful musician. Absolutely, it really was. Oh man, it was stunning and funny. He was funny. Okay, he comes up onto the stage, and he turns right. Okay, he's come up on the stage from the right. Of course, we don't know this from off the stage, but there's all the lights. Okay, you don't see anything. It's just frigging lights. Okay, so he comes up onto the stage and turns right and walks towards where the sound mixer is. Okay, who's just kind of, he's there, you can see him, but he's kind of discreet. Okay, walks towards him, and then kind of turns and walks to his place where he has a stool and some of the other musicians are sat, and he sits there and he tells everybody, dude, I just took the wrong turn. He tells us all. That's how he started, by saying, So he made a couple of jokes about whether or not he might be able to manage the next thing, being so old that he forgets which way to turn. He was beautiful. It was awesome. It was awesome.
Well, I spent a little time working some years at a country music station, and when Mr. Jason Aldean hit the music scene, I immediately disliked him just for his persona. He came across as an arrogant prick. He was very egotistical. every picture. I didn't want to play his music, and this was 2007. So
who
I already had the guy this was the guy at the event that was on stage.
Oh, right, yeah.
There's also some stuff. Yeah, there's some stuff out right now that seems to tie him into. Believe it or not, I know this is one of those things that's kind of like too good to be true, but it ties into the Illuminati card game.
Come on.
The Vegas Illuminati card game actually has a tattoo of the Jack and the Ace that he actually has on his arm. So make of that what you will.
And this and the guy that ran the whole kind of investigation / police / the political side of it, John Podesta's son-in-law.
Something like that. They're connecting this thing all across the
gate fame. Yeah, that guy's son-in-law.
Can I just say something that I've wanted to get out? Is that this Weinstein guy? This is a false fodder. This is the fodder for us to be like, yeah, they got a molester, when it's covering up the all the Podesta shit. You guys seen this Harvey Weinstein little paddle slap on the wrist? I feel personally that that's a distraction from the real shit that's been going on. That's what I think.
Weinstein of the Weinstein film production.
Absolutely, yeah.
Very same.
Yeah, was fired from his company for misconduct. Turns out he had a clause in his contract that basically let him pay off a fine if he got caught in some type of misconduct to the company and couldn't be fired. So he had a I can do anything I want clause in his contract.
Wow. But yeah, I mean, that the whole show business side over there, especially the film side, yeah, lots of satanic, weird stuff in the music industry, but the film side is just, look at how they excused Roman Polanski. It wasn't real rape. It's like, she's freaking 13, dude. Yeah.
You're seeing that trend of Hollywood, and I'm going to bring up something controversial here, but the trans agenda and the LGBT agenda and the normalization of pedophilia and pedo tendencies you are starting to see in films across nations, all across, and especially disturbing in North America. They're really pushing it even in Canada, and we have such a very leftist libtard type government right now. It's insane. You can barely let out a fart without being accused of being a racist, so it's pretty tough.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty convinced that the whole postmodernist agenda is in part, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, it's basically this non-logical, non-reasonable, entirely fascist in mentality or communist in mentality, this whatever we do is right and whatever you do that's not what we do is wrong, and we will not enter into a debate. That ultra liberal, ultra left thing, where it shuts down debate, it shuts down speech.
Exactly. Yeah, I often relate it to how when you talk about Jewry or anything to do with that, like the hardcore, like baby practice, the Kabbalists, the early people.
Yeah,
it's the same thing. They're doing that to like ridiculous shit that you shouldn't even be slapped on the wrist for. Like, you're getting that now to even say like, all right, I understand you may think you got a set of tits or you got this or that or whatever, but let's just talk about it. Let's have a real civilized talk, or let's talk about this and that. Now you can't do anything. It is ridiculous. They're making everything the anti-Semitic way, where you're just shamed into not bringing it up, or you just get what are they going to fine us?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, this is what they're doing is they're molding the mentalities of the guys like P. Mars over there and Tim Osman over here. They're molding these people's mentalities into thinking that it's okay. It's okay. So they'll do things like this, What they'll do. Bravo, very good, very intelligent. So what they will do is they will try They will try. I can talk right over it continuously without a gap, so you don't even hear a single peep of it, and I will do, okay?
Weirdos. Turn.
Yeah, see, this is why I reroute my audio.
No, but you're absolutely right, though, Antonio. That's your whole game plan, is to just try and subvert everything back to a place where freedom of speech. It's really
there. That's a little better. Sorry, guys. I'm just going to keep you turned down for a little bit until they can realize that they're not going to crash my stream. They just won't get access until I decide to give them access.
Retraction takes a few minutes. I mean,
get a little sexy again.
That's all right.
Let's
see.
And then there he goes. He's got to go. Come on, Timmy, baby. Tim, shall I do some maths for you?
You're like made out of chocolate.
Tim, shall I talk numbers? Talk numbers, Tim. I can do numbers for you. Oh yeah, I can do numbers, Timmy. Oh, come on, Timmy. There you go. That's it, Tim. There you go.
You're gonna put that chicken in the pan, Tim? Oh yeah, grill that chicken, Timmy. You grill that
I'm
chicken.
out, guys. I'm not putting up with this. Not putting up with
I'll just want to make one final point of what you were all discussing about. I'll make an analogy. It is, and we're all very polite people. At the end of the day, turn up with a bad wig. No one really pretends that they've got hair. Josh, yeah. We just pretend that they've got a set of hair, and I think we're all polite people, and however people want to be, we'll pretend you've got a nice set of hair, but don't ask me to believe everything that you believe and you need to believe for you to stand there and pretend you've got a full.
Thank you for calling customer service. Bye for now.
Because that's disrespectful to ask me to have to think like you just so that you think you've got a full head of hair.
Well said, man. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
It's been a great show. We ought to maybe wrap it up here.
They win.
Yeah,
they win.
It's Jamie! It's Jamie. Oh, that's harsh. That is really harsh.
That's all right. See, we'll just turn this down a little bit. Because, see, look, I can do this all fucking night. Let me see you try to kill my stream. You can change the address on the Hangout. You can boot everybody off of my Hangout all you want. But you can't kill my stream. So, you can boot off Antonio all you want. You can come and try to interrupt.
Yeah. They're Nazis, aren't they? Yeah, they're Nazis. Unfortunately,
I do. You know,
well, at least this behavior proves the Earth is a spinning ball, so I'm convinced.
I was thinking that, you know, if I behave so rude and ignorant, yeah, and juvenile whilst masturbating constantly, clearly. Another one you cracked off there, Timmy boy. Seeing you pop up. That was an easy one, weren't it? Hey?
Squid.
Oh, it's just gone straight away. Lack of control, almost, that one. But
I really love your efforts. I really do. Unfortunately, they are all for naught. Considering I could leave this sumbitch run all night long. We could run 24/7 of just me. We'll just run 24/7 live of nothing but me.
I thought that Antonio was great. I love that. I mean, I thought it was a great show, guys.
I enjoyed that, guys.
Yeah.
It was good.
No, I really did. I love that you're into the sauce again, Adam. You whenever your brother comes over, you guys are, what is he, your brother-in-law?
He's fast asleep on the sofa, mate. It's hilarious. He's
yeah,
like
dude, you guys get into the stinky sauce, eh? You guys go for the good stuff, the vino.
Yeah. Cheeky little vino.
Thank you all again. It was an amazing show. Thank you so much.
Yes, I guess we are closing. Goodbye, everybody.
Yeah, we might as well.
Well, guys, like and subscribe, and also
So that is not the Jamie Brown from Twitter that we know. That's obviously.
You know what that one means, don't you? That means Tim closes his eyes and has a little thought about Jamie Brown.
Yeah, that's his.
That's what I thought.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh, Jamie's cool, man. Respect to Jamie. Oh, can you feel it now, Timmy? Oh, Timmy. Oh, Timmy.
I'm half tempted to just run a replay for another 8 hours.
Hey, do it.
And just see and let them do whatever they want.
Guys, when Jamie's finished,
right?
What I reckon is let's wrap this up and let's have a chat afterwards, because I'd sooner talk about these strange individuals without them pleasuring themselves. So let's wrap up a good show. I enjoyed it. It's a shame Billy Ray didn't get on. I think.
I know, man.
Well,
maybe
they changed the address link. That's why Antonio dropped out and why John dropped out, because they're changing the address link. So when they try to clink back in, it doesn't work out. So sorry to Billy Ray. Sorry to Antonio.
For another week.
We're so sorry.
Hey,
like
Adam said, this gives us attention. At least we know we're doing something right, eh, boys? Amen to that.
Hovering over the target.
Yep, and at least we don't have to require.
Look, just think of it this way. Think of it this way, guys. We're good enough to make Tim Osmond climax. Numerous times, multiple climaxes.
If I were to guess, though, it probably doesn't take much. You'd like a one-pump chunk.
Well, that 8 for 9th one where he popped in for just a nanosecond says maybe there's a couple of nerve issues going off. I don't know. Maybe he faked it just for me, that quick one.
Just for you.
Yeah.
Just for you, London. Well, see you later, folks.
All right, my friend.
Yeah, I reckon we might as well call it.
With us. Billy Ray, we will have you back soon, my brother, and we appreciate it. Thanks for the shout out there on TFR. We appreciate you helping us get there. It's been great so far, and we're having a blast with it. And we can't wait to get the rest of this Wu-Tang clan of ours on sometime soon too, for sure. And Antonio, amazing stuff. Thank you so much, and we hope to have you back soon. Can't wait to see your gyroscope videos that I know you're about to disappear off the grid and start working on, man. So thank you for spending some time with us before you went underground and started working in your lab.
Yeah, that was good to speak to Antonio tonight, mate. I've hit and miss over a year and a half with him, but just one last thing before I go, guys. My apologies for my references tonight, but it's been difficult dealing with a load of self-pleasure artists.
Yes.
So my apologies to people if I've been a little lewd this evening, but like James says, you know. It's at least we're being noticed. I'd sooner be unnoticed and have a really good debate like we were doing. Do you know what I mean?
It was good. It was good. And we'll have another one soon, I'm sure.
Yeah. So guys, God bless. I'll catch you in the week.
All right, brother. Thank you so much.
As I posted in the chat, which nobody said, if I don't see you for a week, I'll.
All right, brother. Love you.
Night, guys.
Good night. Love you. Be good.
Well, all right, sir.
Well, we've managed to withstand another attack.
It's cool. We're used to.
Big shout out to Bob from Globebusters. He's in chat. Appreciate you stopping by, Bob. Antonio Suberats was a long time coming. So, Bob, you're next. You two are a long time coming. We can't wait to get you on here.
Can't wait, man. Amazingly anticipating it.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that said, we might as well go ahead and get the hell out of here. Thank you, everybody. My name is Josh Corey. Oh, by the way, we have this Sunday right here in St. Peter's, we're having a Missouri Flat Earth meetup. Show Me the Curve. Look for it on eventbrite.com. The Show Me the Curve Flat Earth meetup right here in Missouri. Look for the Ironworks on Tuesdays and Fridays from 4 a.m. Central to 6 a.m. Central. That's 2 to 4 in Pacific. That is 10 a.m. to noon, Greenwich Mean Time. Look for us on Twitter at Iron Realm Media, Facebook at Flat and Free on the Iron Realm. You know what? We're pretty well everywhere, so just keep an eye out. All you need to do is Google Iron Realm Media, and you will find us. Thank you so much. We will see you guys next week. This has been another Flat Earth Friday Fringe-Cast with Iron Realm Media, TGIF. Thank God it's flat. I am out of here. I love you guys. Bye-bye.
Keep it flat.
I am out of here. I love you guys.